All right, everybody. Good evening to everyone, and or good day to everyone who is ever listening or watching this. Thank you very much for coming here and being curious or whatever in your time of day that you are watching this video. So this is once again another episode of me doing my art with adventure, and here I am doing another stream of me creating, finishing my art, and so far so good. We're almost done with this design, and we're hopefully going to wrap it up very soon. If not today, probably next stream, depends. But so far we're almost there. I'm really sorry if it's getting a little bit dragging on a bit, but this is how I really do my designs for now, due to my lack of experience and lack of ideas what I should do with the this kind of art, uh, concept arts kind of thing, where I create concepts of backgrounds with the idea of some few fine arts and uh, yeah, mixing it with some nice scenery with the background. So yeah, so this is where we're having a let me just put it down. Okay, here we are. This is the latest editing from the last stream. So we're having a wonderful background over here with the beach, with the buildings being kind of being absorbed by the by the atmosphere, so that it won't be too obvious. And I'm kind of liking it. hmm And right now, I might probably just finalize and editing the character, because something is uh, not very good for yeah, something's not really good for me with this, because the skin, I think, is a bit too vibrant. I'll see what I can do to adjust this. But other than that, I think most of the parts is pretty much all good. I'll probably add some things here and there just to make it more livelier. But it depends as I go and do this for this session. Yeah, I think I might be able to finish this today. So yeah, I'm really excited to finish this so I can move on to another project. Uh, anyways, so far so good. This thing is really good already. Uh, just need some polishing. Okay. Sorry if I'm swallowing my words most of the time. I'm not very used to streaming yet. If you can notice, for my recent ones, my very first ones and recent recordings, I'm kind of stuttering a bit, but I'm getting there. So we'll have more discussions, or me explaining more of my skills to you guys, so that you can learn more about this designing stuff. so, so yeah, uh, I'm using Clip Studio Paint, and I can explain more about this designing thing to you guys, because most of the stuff that you can just watch as tutorials in most of the things that you can see in YouTube or other like Skillshare and stuff are mostly it's either being fast forward or being skipped to accommodate lesser time. So mine is that I'm doing it in live and having it being portrayed to you in real time, so that you can know how these things is being done uh, bit by bit, so that you will understand the tediousness and how it is pretty much not very easy to do, but it's fun. It's really fun, I could say. It's enjoyable. It might be sometimes if you're doing it repetitively, things like this beach, if you can uh, like what I did before. Um, yeah, there are some parts here that are repetitive, the style and the stuff that I did. Mm, but yeah, what helps me out is what I'm listening here, which is called the light novel or web novels to some people. I listen to it through audiobook style, and I can entertain myself even though it's not very distracting, so that it will help me just to be focused also with my designing while at the same time being entertained. And so this is my gig doing this. Most of the time when I'm working, even during work, I listen to audiobooks sometimes, if not music, so that I can entertain myself while doing it. Because I would admit some of the, especially the when you're just starting to sketch, just putting on the fundamentals and stuff, it would be a bit boring for you, or I might say to myself that this is a bit boring sometimes. But once you get over to that part, get over the parts that are boring, once you are starting to put details, starting to put the things together, and then it starts to get fun. It starts to be exciting. Especially when I started coloring this, it's really enjoyable. Uh, and even though I use a different kind of method in coloring this. We started with a gradient, if I may say so. Here, this is a sketch, and this is the gradient. Yeah, I started with a gradient, uh, and then I'll move on with the coloring, and using a gradient mapping. The gradient mapping tool for this program, Clip Studio Paint, and it actually turned out pretty well. Mhm. Uh, I might not be following some of the coloring rules a bit, but this is just for fun. I might say I didn't have to worry about much of the what color should be more prominent and what shouldn't be not. Uh, yeah, so this is just an experiment also, and it turned out pretty well, I might say. hmm I just a few stuffs that I just need to adjust today, and that will work out really well. So yeah. Now back to the light novel and stuff. We're right now in. Let's see. So yeah, we're in chapter 45. For the Death Mage who doesn't want a fourth time. So for the last time of the story, just a bit of recap. So the vampires attack the can't remember the city that they're on right now, but the Vandalist territory, the new territory, where there are titans and undead titans that became his subordinates, and the ghouls, yes, the ghouls that he brought with him are there living together and having a wonderful time, a blast, and uh, c- building up a family, building up a community, and also leveling up. It's pretty much a game-based kind of stuff of story, and so we're going through some developments, and finally some enemies attack the base, and who who would have thought that the vampires would actually do that, would be the very first enemies that will attack. So right now the vampires are here, and it turns out Vandally has also a bit of a dominion over them, because some reasons about the lineage of vampires and some of Vandaly's ability also that's affecting them. So far, he got one of them, the female vampire. I can't remember her name, but she was eventually kind of, from the last part, she kind of turned on against. Actually, her teammates turned on against her, and now we don't know if she would continue the assassination or would she join Vandally. So we'll find out today as we read this next part of the story. So yeah, so buckle up and enjoy the story, and also enjoy my me designing at the background. If you're here just for the story of the Death Mage who doesn't want the fourth time. So yeah, we're in volume 2. We're approaching volume 3 probably next week. I'm not very sure. Let me check. Mm, yeah, after chapter 51, there will be some few side chapters and a character summary. After that, it will be volume 3. So right now we're still at volume 2. Okay, guys. Enough talking about me and some of the stuff about here. Let's get this story going and this art style going. So yeah, I'll definitely get my own catchphrase one day. So look forward to it. So yeah, I also control my laugh. I'm not a very big talker, so I'm trying to adjust. So bear with me a bit. So yeah, once again, let's get the story going and the designing going. Okay, guys, let's go. Let me just mute myself.
Chapter 45, Apparently I'm her number one and only one. After breaking Serkrent's soul and having his dinosaur zombies eat the body so that he would gain experience points, Vandali brought Eleonora to the dining hall. He did this so that he could gather all of the important people here to listen to what Eleonora had to say. I'm terribly sorry. Tara, the one apologizing while kneeling on the floor, was not Eleonora, but Tara. To think that I was charmed so easily, spilled all of Van Summer's secrets and then carelessly went to sleep. How can I apologize for such a thing? Tara, no, please don't worry about it. Vandali had panicked after Eleonora told him what happened to Tara, but considering that she had fallen asleep on a stone floor in the middle of winter, she seemed quite healthy. Vandali didn't think any more of the incident than that, so he felt that Tara didn't need to apologize so fervently. It could not be helped, Tara. Even if you had high levels in skills such as status effect resistance and magic resistance, you would likely have been unable to resist the demon eyes. Zadyrus, and if you apologize any more than that, you'll only cause trouble for Van. Bastia, thank you very much for your words. But why have things turned out this way? Tara directed this question at Vandali, who was sitting right next to her. The two of them were sitting on a single Titan-sized chair. Not only could they hear each other breathing, their bodies were in contact. I heard that you were worrying about how there was distance between me and you, so I decided to try shortening that distance to 0. Vandali, who did you hear such a thing from? Tara, Eleonora. Vandali, what does this woman think she's doing, blabbering such things so freely? Tara, your tone is becoming unpleasant. And do not squirm so much, your elbow has been hitting the boy. Zadyrus, as Tara had moved around with her head in her hands, realizing that Vandali had been told everything she had said before she lost consciousness, her elbow had inflicted considerable damage to him. So why is this woman here? Tara, after quick recovery, Tara glared at Eleonora. She seemed to be looking not at Eleonora's face, but at a spot below Eleonora's neck, seemingly wary of the charming demon eyes. Eleonora sat quietly in her chair. Her hands and legs weren't bound, nor had she been gagged or blindfolded. It seemed that she might fly away and escape if they tried to place such restrictions on her. I am here to tell Vandali-sama everything I know, of course. Eleonora. For some reason, Eleonora was adding Sama to Vandali's name and acting as if she were his vassal. Trying to stop her after those events was difficult. Eleonora had praised the goddess Vida despite Vandali having told her it wasn't necessary, and after that, she had kissed his hand and sworn loyalty to him. If he hadn't stopped her, she would have likely gone on to kiss his feet. On top of that, Eleonora addressed him with an incredibly formal tone, and he had to put a lot of effort into asking her to return to her original, informal way of speaking. She had said, I would never dare to, and Vandali had only managed to convince her by telling her that this was an order, gesturing with his hand by forming a fist. For some reason, she had made an expression that made it impossible to tell whether she was scared or happy. Can we have a discussion of what comes next after we listen to what Eleonora-san has to say? I woke up to find that lots of things have happened, so I still don't know what's going on. Dasa, these are Dasa-sama's words, so perhaps we should accept her suggestion. Sam, who had recklessly brought his carriage inside the royal castle's dining hall, relayed Dasa's words. And then Eleonora began to speak about the reason she and the other vampires had come here, and what the vampires who worshipped the evil god of joyful life, Hukaka, had done to Dasa and Vandali. Incidentally, Eleonora, Serkrent and their subordinates hadn't been haunted by the spirits of those they had killed up until now because they had preemptively poured holy water over their entire bodies numerous times. As an anti-spiritualist method, they had endured full-body burns in order to prevent any spirits from informing Vandali of their whereabouts. It was a very effective method against Vandali, but quite a radical approach. Things are on a much larger scale than I thought. Vandali sighed as he listened. The vampires who had killed his father Valen had never become directly involved with him after he regained his memories up until now, and he could never learn anything more about them, so he hadn't really had strong feelings towards them. They had been hiding their existence behind High Priest Gordon and Hines, after all. The Mage Shield Nation was a nation of the Amid Empire that worshipped his enemy, the god of law and fate Alder. He had never even dreamed that its strings were being pulled by a greater power. If they were going to advocate that vampires were evil, they should have at least prevented vampires from gaining control over them. Well, the Mage Shield Nation and Amid Empire were always my enemies to begin with. Vandally, the truth appears to be stranger than fiction. Sam, it was a truth that shocked even Sam, who had once been a citizen of the Mage Shield Nation. The pure-breed vampires, Berkine, Turnisha and Gubberman. The noble-born and subordinate vampires who served them. And Marshal Thomas Palpabek. Even though Vandally had destroyed one enemy, it was as if his enemies had explosively increased in number. And they were even involved in the war 200 years ago? You guys instigated that? Orcus. On top of that, the vampires who worshipped the evil god of joyful life were considerably malicious. They had apparently been behind the war in which the Mage Shield Nation destroyed Talersheim. Nobody could blame Borkus for exuding rage from his entire body. I hadn't been born at that time, so I don't know the details. But I've heard that Gubberman used the war to have his subordinates collect the dead bodies of Talersheim's heroes. Eleonora spoke hastily, perhaps scared of Borkus. The rough outline of the teachings of Hukaka, the evil god of joyful life, was that in this world, there were those who had their lives toyed around with and those who toyed with others' lives. By toying with others' lives, one could become a superior being. With the divine protection of such a god, it was apparently possible to tame undead who would normally be impossible to tame, or at least create undead and turn them into servants. And one of the three people who had attained that evil god's divine protection, the pure-breed vampire Gubberman, apparently had an interest in turning the dead bodies of those praised as heroes into undead and adding them to his collection. That was why he sent his subordinates into wars and large-scale monster hunts in which heroes lost their lives in order to retrieve the heroes' bodies. He had dispatched his subordinates in the war 200 years ago, too. I see, so that's why Giina and Zandia Joukjan's bodies aren't here anymore. But why didn't they take my body? Borkus, perhaps because your body was terribly damaged? With your dominant arm severed and your magic sword broken, it would not be strange to think that they would have thought you would not be a powerful asset even after becoming an undead. New Arza, are you trying to say that I'm not a powerful asset? Borkus, it is not me who thinks this. I am simply saying that the vampires might have thought this way. New Arza, this is just something I overheard, but apparently the other bodies were carried out first because yours was terribly damaged, and then Mikhail returned before your body could be taken. Eleonora, and then Mikhail and the vampires who had encountered each other had apparently done battle. It was likely that the vampires had thought that Gubberman would reward them if they simply killed Mikhail, who had wounds all over his body and had lost his precious spear, and then retrieved Borkus's body afterwards. However, as an adventurer who was said to be destined to become S-class, Mikhail was powerful even without the spear. That was the origin of his title. He succeeded in repelling the vampires. However, as a result of the stamina he expended in doing so, his wounds deteriorated and were treated too late, causing him to perish. To think that something like that happened right next to me while I was dead. So I guess he set up the dice so that the vampires wouldn't be able to get inside. Borkus. What had finished Mikhail off wasn't the dragon golem that had been carefully crafted by the goddess, but the vampires who had come to retrieve Borkus's body. It was quite a questionable story. But it seems like we won't find their bodies even if we defeat the dragon golem. Vandally. Alright, kid. We'll pillage them, take back the ladies from that Gubberman vampire. A man becomes an adult for the first time when he steals a woman from another. Borkus. But what about Eleonora-san? Doesn't this mean I've stolen her from the vampire called Berkine? Vandally, this one doesn't count. Borkus. Well, he is someone I want to destroy in the future, but please wait a decade or two. Vandally, I don't like situations where love is stolen. Whether I would be on the stealing side or having love stolen from me. No, it's questionable as to whether this falls under the category of stolen love in the first place. Still, no matter what Vandally said, he would still end up doing deadly battle with the vampires worshipping the evil god of joyful life. They were a group that was even more necessary to exterminate than the High Priest Gordon and Hines in order for him to survive and live a happy life. Since they were vampires, they were immortal. If he left them alive, they would continue coming up with plans forever until Vandally died. Because of this, he felt no opposition to retrieving Giina and Zandia's corpses and turning them into undead, and if they were already undead, stealing them away was the obvious choice. But also, can you stop trying to put me on a throne? Vandali. For some reason, Balkis was trying to marry Vandali to Zandia, who had been second in line to the throne while alive, and place him on Taylasheim's throne. What, you're already a king, right? What's the problem? Balkis. The boy doesn't know when to give up. Zadyrus. Well, perhaps it can be considered practice for becoming a nobleman. Sam. Botchan. There's no need to worry. You don't need knowledge about laws and taxes. You're not taxing anyone now, are you? Saria. Taylasheim isn't really a proper nation right now, so it'll be more like pretending to be a king. Rita. You might be able to gain a new title and make Balkis and the others even stronger, you know? Bastia. The thing that was most troubling was that everyone other than Vandali seemed to agree on the idea. Everyone. It isn't that Vandali is against it. He is just holding himself back because of the first princess and her descendants in the Orborn kingdom. Darsa. Darsa relayed her son's thoughts in his place. It was possible that the first princess who had escaped to the Orborn kingdom and her descendants would make a claim to the throne and try to restore their royal lineage. Vandali had mistakenly thought last night that Eleonora was a spy who had come from the Orborn kingdom for this very purpose. The war had taken place 200 years ago. With the Titans' lifespans of 300 years, the same as the ghouls, it was cutting it close, but there was still a chance that she was alive. If that were the case, if Vandali sat on Taylasheim's throne for even a moment, it would become very troublesome. Wouldn't Princess Livia and her descendants praise the Holy Sun who restored Taylasheim and gladly give up the throne? After all, the Holy Sun has restored Taylasheim's castle, walls and cityscape to its past splendor. New Arza. As New Arza said, these things could all be called Vandali's achievements. Even though the removal of the trees and extermination of the monsters had been carried out by the undead titans and ghouls, it was his Skellum transmutation skill that had restored the city's structures. Even if the first princess and her descendants had returned to Taylasheim, without Vandali, it would have taken decades of time, an unimaginable amount of labor and an equivalent amount of funds to return the city to normal. Vandali had rebuilt the city, so this wouldn't be necessary. But I don't think they'll hand over the throne. And no matter how good a person the princess is, the people of the Orborn kingdom will have their own expectations of her. Vandali. It was even possible that assassins would be sent to kill Vandali. In the worst-case scenario, an extermination force with high-class adventurers might be dispatched. Other than the damp Vandali, none of those currently living in Taylasheim were of races that the Orborn kingdom recognized as people. There would be no legal repercussions if the Orborn kingdom forcibly removed them and occupied the city. So because of that, I can't do anything careless while we still don't know how the Orborn kingdom will act. Well, maybe I should have thought about this earlier. From now on, we'll have to think about defenses against not only monsters, but people as well. Vandali. Only while they didn't know how the Orborn kingdom would act. Vandali had no intention of relinquishing Taylasheim. It was a place that he had made great efforts to obtain and arrange, a place for everyone to live. He wouldn't simply give that away. There was a piece of magical equipment that was capable of resurrecting Darso underground as well. Even the Orborn kingdom would become his enemies if they were to try and steal it from him. Now then, I think we should get to discussing plans to deal with various things. Vandali. Vansama, before that, you must decide what we are going to do with this woman. Terra. Terra interrupted Vandali as she pointed a finger at Eleonora. It seemed that she felt great humiliation because of the fact that she had been misled by Eleonora's calming demon eyes. But Eleonora turned her gaze towards Terra without moving a single eyebrow, and Terra lowered her head. I am very sorry about what happened last night. Eleonora. Eh? You are apologizing willingly? Terra. Of course. I am the one at fault, after all. I simply do not want to become Vandali-sama's enemy. That would be more terrifying than anything. Terrifying enough that if I have to cast away my pride as a noble-born vampire to avoid it, then so be it. Eleonora. As Terra expressed surprise at Eleonora's apology, Eleonora smoothly explained the reasons behind her apology. After destroying Serkrent's soul, Vandali had briefly spoken to Eleonora and the spirits of the subordinate vampires. And then Vandali had broken and destroyed all of the subordinate vampires' souls. It was not because they had tried to take Vandali's life. He did that because they had directly ended the life of his father Velen, and because they had tried to kill Terra. The reason Eleonora was sitting here unrestrained and unharmed was because Vandali had decided that she was not an enemy. She wasn't involved with Valen's death. Though she had initially come to kill Vandali, she had lost the will to do so before she could attempt it, and she had stopped the subordinate vampire who tried to kill Terra. With those 3 points in mind, Vandali acknowledged that she wasn't his enemy. Why are you saying all these things about me? The goddess's divine protection and all that was just a misunderstanding. Vandally, no, in a way, you possess a power even more fierce than that of the gods. Eleonora. This was Eleonora's response to Vandali's question. Destroying a soul is something that only the legendary demon king was capable of. Even the evil god of joyful life could not do such a thing, let alone my previous master. Eleonora, I heard about things like that when I was a kid as well, but well, that's why I was surprised when you destroyed that guy's soul. My body froze unconsciously. I suppose that's what you call rigor mortis. Baucus. Leaving Baucus's joke aside, there are none in Lambda capable of destroying souls. The reason for this is that the circle of transmigration for people is the domain of Rodcorti, not one of the gods who exist in Lambda. Rodcorti is the god who governs the circle of transmigration system that applies in multiple worlds, including Earth, Origin and Lambda. That is why no god or evil god, no matter how powerful, can destroy a soul. No matter what kind of gruesome torture someone is subjected to, no matter what kind of disgusting manner in which they may die, no matter how many hundreds or even thousands of years their souls are bound for, they will find their way back to Rodcorti eventually. And then they will be reborn as a new life form. Including Eleonora, the people of Lambda are unaware of Rodcorti's existence. But everyone believes in the circle of transmigration. Because the circle of transmigration is a guaranteed thing, the people have hope after death. One day they will be reborn and walk a new life. As long as the soul is safe, there is a chance that one will be chosen to be a god's follower after death. Many heroes and great individuals have been chosen in this way to become subordinate gods and followers, and their deeds are praised even after their deaths. And as long as the soul is intact, there is hope that the god they follow will revive them. The thing that denies all of that hope is the destruction of the soul. The only one who has been able to do that up until now was the Demon King, and it was this power to destroy souls that made the gods fear him and evil gods obey him. So now that the Demon King is gone, you are the one with the most fierce power in this world. Neither Berkine nor Hihirishukaka can even compare to you. That's why I don't want to be your enemy. Eleonora. Eleonora was and always had been a slave of fear. Her parents who had ruled her through fear sold her as a slave, and the slave merchant who purchased her saw no value in her body that was thin and dark-colored back then. He treated her roughly without caring if he caused her injuries, and the mine owner who bought her after that treated her like an expiring product that should be exploited to its fullest. And then she was purchased by Berkine who had spotted her quality by coincidence, and then she was ruled by even greater fear. But unlike her treatment up until that point, Berkine treated her well as long as she produced favorable results. When she produced results superior to those of the other children, she would be given praise instead of a hard fist. When she obeyed his commands, she would receive soft, pretty clothes instead of cold chains and collars. If she carried out filthy, gruesome tasks, she would be able to eat extravagant food instead of soup containing half-rotten vegetable scraps. If she flattered her master and wagged her tail, her body would be decorated with beautiful pieces of jewelry instead of scars. And so Eleonora developed into a beautiful woman, was accepted as a noble-born vampire, acquired the charming demon Ice and received Berkine's favor. However, at the same time, she feared losing that favor above all else. Berkine did acknowledge Eleonora's excellence, but she understood that he didn't consider her to be a unique existence. To Berkine, Eleonora was a recent favorite, but given 1,000 years, anywhere between 1 and a dozen vampires of her quality would come by. Yes, just 1,000 years. For Berkine, who had lived for 100,000 years, this wasn't a long time. That was why Eleonora continued wagging her tail for Berkine. However, she met someone even more fearsome than him. That person was Vandali. If Berkine discovered that his pet dog had gone over to the damp side, he would likely tremble in humiliation and rage. If Eleonora was ever caught by him, she would have to be prepared to be subjected to horrendous torture. But her soul would not be destroyed? Are you really sure? Vandali. It was not only Terra, but Vandali who also gave Eleonora a puzzled look. I'm sure you will get paid better on Berkine's side. They have more resources on Berkine's side. They have more resources, too. In fact, his side is stronger than ours, overwhelmingly so. Vandali. That's not true. You tortured Serkrent and killed him in a one-sided manner, didn't you? Even in perfect condition, it would be impossible for me to defeat him in such a ruthless, cruel way. Eleonora. I'm starting to question whether you're complimenting me. Vandali. Even Eleonora seemed to think that Berkine's side had more resources. She didn't seem to think that this was particularly important, however. The one from yesterday, Serkrent, was it? I was only able to kill him so one-sidedly because he was so careless. Vandally himself didn't think that Serkrent had been a weak enemy. He was simply careless, or rather, very unlucky in various ways. As he hadn't possessed accurate information regarding Vandally, he had been separated from his subordinates when Vandally removed the flaw. In addition, one arm and leg had been cut off by Borkus, who Vandally had discreetly summoned, and then Borkus and their zombie dinosaurs had slaughtered all of his subordinates. The finishing touch was that he had chosen to engage in close quarters combat with his claws before sealing his wounds, thinking that magic wouldn't work against Vandally. Because of this, he had his arm caught in the impact-negating barrier, become unable to move and panicked at the prospect of dying of blood loss due to having his regenerative abilities nullified by the healing negation spell. It would have been better to use a weapon like Gogan had. With his arm directly caught inside the impact-negating barrier, kinetic energy had been directly drained from his muscles and he had become immobilized. And Vandally had learned from his past mistakes and poured a huge amount of mana into the barrier this time. Because his skills level had increased, the performance of the barrier itself had increased as well. With so many disadvantageous circumstances working against Serkrent, it could only be said that he had been unlucky. From what I heard from you before, Eleonora, it seems that he was being driven into a corner in various ways even before you arrived here, so maybe he was panicking because of that? But if he had kept his distance and engaged in long-range combat, he might have at least been able to escape. Vandally. The reason Vandally wasn't saying that he could have put up a decent fight was probably because Borkus had been present while Vandally remained inside his barriers. A superior foe behind him and an untouchable target in front. Under those circumstances, there had been no hope for Serkrent to win that battle. Even if he ran away, only execution would be waiting for him. Eleonora, vampire society is rough, isn't it? Well, leaving that aside, I'm still not powerful. I'm just specialized in defense. Vandally, I don't have offensive power like Borkus's ability to slaughter enemies with a single swing of a sword. No, I do, but I can't aim on bullets too accurately and they're slower and have shorter range than arrows. But one day you'll kill Berkine and his vampires, you will destroy them, won't you? Eleonora, of course. Vandally, even if he is a vampire who had lived for 100,000 years, it would probably be easier to defeat him than the people who will resurrect here from origin with cheat-like abilities. Even if he does possess an evil god's divine protection, he isn't an evil god himself, after all. But if this Berkine person steps into the fight directly before I become strong, what will you do? Vandally, that won't happen. They would never cross the boundary mountain range personally. Eleonora declared this with confidence. There was a basis for that confidence. Berkine and the other pure-breed vampires were indeed powerful, but it could never be said that the pure-breed vampires were on good terms with each other. If Berkine were to act personally, the other two pure-breed vampires, Turnisha and Guberman, would promise to help, saying, I see, do your best. We'll lend you our subordinates. However, they would then seize the vampire organization in his absence. The king of the hill can only be a king because there is a hill to be a king of. If he stepped down from the hill, making it back up would be next to impossible. Eleonora, as to be expected of a community that worshipped an evil god. The idea of kicking each other down instead of cooperating was deeply ingrained in its roots. So you're saying that's why it's fine for you to be on my side? Vandally, that's right. There is nobody more fearsome in this world than you. Eleonora, so you'll put in as much effort as you can to get along with Terra and everyone else? Vandally, of course. Their enemies are your enemies, are they not? I will beg for their forgiveness even if I have to lick their feet. Eleonora, in fact, if Terra had been killed, Vandally would have likely killed Eleonora, so this was the correct response. I get the feeling that she's being too brave about it, though. Well then, if Terra forgives you, then that will be fine. Let's get along from now on. Vandally, and so Vandally quickly moved on. Vandally? Are you sure it's alright to believe her so easily? Dasa. Boy, what this person is saying is equivalent to saying that if there is ever someone she fears more than you, she will betray you. Zadyrus, Dasa and Zadyrus expressed their objections. Vandally waved both of his hands to calm down the flustered ladies. As to whether I should believe her, it's alright because at her request, I'm going to apply a method of insurance. And what you say is true, Zadyrus, but that's how the world is. Vandally, people gather beneath those who can provide them with the most benefits. On Earth, Vandally had seen news reports of trouble caused for factories and businesses because their employees were readily leaving to work for other businesses that paid better. What Eleonora was doing was equivalent to that. The criteria that Eleonora is using is fear, So as long as nothing like the Demon King's resurrection happens and I'm the only one who can destroy souls, I'm sure she'll never betray me. Vandally, there's also a chance that someone with that ability might be among those reincarnating from origin, but I probably don't need to worry about it. It's difficult to imagine that Rod Corti would give someone a power that infringes on his domain. Mew, well, the method of ruling through fear is something that has existed in the past, but Zadyrus, other reasons for accepting Eleonora as one of our companions. She wasn't involved in the incident with my father, so she's not an enemy. I can gain information about the vampires who worship the evil god from her. She can fight for us. Also Vandally, she's a pretty lady, I suppose. She has a nice body, too. Porcus, yeah, that's right. Vandally, Porcus interjected, and Vandally nodded in agreement with his words. A few seconds later, for some reason, there was a strange atmosphere in the room. Really, why was that? Vansama, didn't we agree that you should hastily deny this fact? Terra, I don't believe in telling unnecessary lies. Vandally, how can this be? Then does that mean you prefer this woman over me? Terra, no, you have a nicer body, Terra. Vandally, after all, Terra has more muscle, particularly in the upper arms. And her abdominal muscles are quite splendid to touch as well. Oh my, if that is the case. Terra held her face in her hands as if blushing. No, I am sure he is referring to her muscles. Zadyrus, there's no other explanation. Bazdia, Zadyrus and Bazdia whispered to each other, and they were entirely correct. So, Botchan, what did you mean by method of insurance? Sam returned the derailed conversation to its original topic. I will make a glum in the shape of a piercing and apply it to her. With that, I will know where she is at all times, and if anything happens, I will make the glum attack her body from the inside. Vandally thought that this was a harsh method of insurance for Eleonora, but this was something that she herself wanted. It was Vandally who had deliberately suggested a harsher method in order to make it easier for everyone to accept Eleonora as a companion, however. Incidentally, Vandally planned to put mercury on the inside of the piercing and apply preservation to prevent corrosion. If you're going that far, I don't have any complaints about it, but where are you going to have her put that piercing? Her belly button? Vigoro, Botchan likes belly buttons, after all. For muscles, wrists, all parts that we don't have. Rita, Vigoro, Rita, I'm sure you know this, but other than muscles, everything else is a misunderstanding. And anyway, what parts do you have, Rita? Vandally, loveliness. Rita, I'll have her put it on her tongue. Vandally, as Rita made a joke, this was Vandaly's serious reply to Vigoro's question. Her tongue. Vigoro, Vandally, that's a little darcer. For some reason, everyone drew away from him. Whether it is 1 or 2 piercings or as many as you wish, I will accept them. Eleonora poked out her red tongue as if asking Vandally to pierce holes in it. I want to discuss Talersheim's defenses, so can we leave this topic here? Vandally, what was important was what they would do next. Incidentally, Vandally had decided to leave the inspection of his newly acquired soul break skill until later. Name, Eleonora. Rank, 8 race, noble-born vampire baroness. Level, 47. Job, demon. User job level, 70. Job history, slave, servant, apprentice mage, apprentice warrior, mage. Age, 6 years old, 20 years old at time of vampire transformation. Passive skills, self-enhancement, subordination, level 3 superhuman strength, level 5 rapid regeneration, level 2 status effect resistance, level 5 intuition, level 3 mental corruption, level 3 automatic mana recovery, level 3 detect presence, level 3 active skills, mining, level 1 time attribute magic, level 5 life attribute magic, level 5 no attribute magic, level 2 mana control, level 3 swordsmanship, level 1 unarmed fighting technique, level 1 silent steps, level 3 steel, level 1 housework, level 2 unique skills, charming demon eyes, level 7. Chapter 46, Preparing Defenses While Desperate and Out of My Mind. Now then, I want to set up Talersheim's defenses. Vandally. Using the contents of the discussion that had taken place on the day Eleonora had been accepted among his companions, Vandally and the others set to work. From Eleonora they had learned that the vampires worshipping the evil god had subordinates in positions of power within the Mage nation, including their, currently ex-marshal, and they even had subordinates in the Orborn kingdom. It was uncertain how much strength the pure-breed vampires would invest into the task of killing Vandally, but in the worst-case scenario, The vampires among the Mage Shield Nation's army could send troops to Talersheim. The only thing sturdy about Talersheim right now was its appearance. It wouldn't hold out against an army of thousands, and with the vampires among the army making hidden movements, escape might be impossible as well. If Vandali was on his own, he would have the option of escaping while he could, but if the enemy's reach extended even as far as the Orborn Kingdom, there was no place that he was completely safe on this continent. Of course, because Vandali needed to ensure the safety of the undead titans and ghouls who lived in Talersheim, the option of separating himself from them was non-existent. There aren't any cowards here who would drive you out for their own safety. Borkus, that is correct, Holy Son. We will continue fighting, even if we quite literally have our flesh and entrails severed and our bones broken. New Arza, I'm a bit late in having a say in this, but I agree. Vandali, we'd be in trouble without you. Vigoro, indeed, if the magic items we are using now were to break, we would once again face problems with fertility. Even if we leave that matter aside, what is the use in driving out our own king in order to achieve temporary safety? Zadyrus, Borkus, New Arza, Vigoro and Zadyrus made it clear that this was not an option. It wasn't as if Andali didn't want to protect Talersheim, the place where he belonged. He planned to go to the Orborn Kingdom eventually, but he planned to at least return for a visit once a year or once every few years. Even if he moved away to chase his dreams, he wanted there to be a home for him to return to. That was how he felt. Thank you. Well then, we will set up a system that will hold just fine even if we're attacked by an army of 10,000, including vampires. We'll achieve this by spring or early summer, or midsummer at latest. Vandali, are you insane? Everyone, no, I'm desperate and out of my mind. Vandali, Berkine and the other vampires who had sent Eleonora's party here would be suspicious at the sudden lack of contact, realize that they had failed and take the next step. Well, it was unlikely that they would suddenly manipulate the Mage Shield Nation into sending its troops here because of that, but they would at least try to gather more detailed information about Talersheim. And once they learned about Talersheim's situation, it was highly likely that they would realize that dispatching a few vampires would be ineffective and begin to make a greater effort to crush the city. Thithizgalum transmutation, nobody can use it except for Vandali's armor. Leaving aside the mana problems, it's impossible for alchemists to create them in an instant and have them change their shape freely. The same goes for taming the undead. Eleonora, this was what Eleonora had said. If the pure-breed vampires discovered that Vandali possessed these abilities, they would try to kill him at all costs. That's a bit of an overreaction. The 3 pure-breed vampires can tame undead as well, can't they? Vandali, as Vandali asked this question, Eleonora, who was having trouble pronouncing words because of the new piercing in her tongue, shook her head. Berkine's group can't tame them. Turnisha and Gibberman are the ones who mainly use undead, and they can turn corpses into undead and control them, but they can't control creatures who have already turned undead. Eleonora, it seemed that the undead controlled by the pure-breed vampires were those created themselves. They would not be able to tame even a rank 1 living dead if it had already become an undead without their intervention. So if they discovered that Vandali's armor can tame undead, they would be outraged. Especially Gibberman. Eleonora, I see. Vandali, Thezord King Borkus was one of the heroes that Gibberman had wanted, but now he was already an undead. Vandali had even gathered the scattered bone fragments of his right arm and used corpse healing to restore it, so claiming even a single bone fragment of Borkus would be impossible. Vandali didn't know what kind of personality Gibberman had, but it did seem likely that he would be outraged to learn that Umirdamper had stolen one of the heroes that he had wanted in his collection. Vandali found it satisfying to know this, but felt that it would be unreasonable for Gibberman to get so serious over it. He wanted to go on the offensive so that he wouldn't lose to such an unreasonable person, but that was difficult. Like the vampires, Vandali and his companions would find it difficult to cross the boundary mountain range now. In addition, the vampires who worshipped the evil god possessed numerous bases and Eleonora didn't know the locations of all of them. After coming to the conclusion that going on the offensive wasn't a realistic plan, Vandali set out about addressing the problem of not having enough numbers. Talersheim had originally been a fortress city nation of 5,000 titans. Of course, this meant that the city was plenty large enough for a population of 5,000 to live inside the city's walls. However, there were only 1,000 undead titans. Even including the ghouls and monsters of the new races Vandali had created, there were less than 2,000 of them. Creating a flawless defense with these numbers would be impossible. As undead didn't feel fatigue or need to sleep, It was possible to have them permanently keep watch, but Vandali didn't want to ask them to do this. The undead needed riches and pleasure in their day-to-day lives as well. So the first thing he did was increase the number of golems he had at his disposal. Get up, go. Vandali, he went to Garen's Valley and mined the stone. The method he used was to directly turn the stone walls into golems and have them walk themselves back to Talesheim. Other than requiring a lot of mana, this method was very easy. Amazing, holy sun. Titan, doesn't that mean we're losing our jobs? Titan, because there's no time. In any case, I'm going to be mining here today until this place becomes known as Garen's Pit instead of Garen's Valley. Vandali, we're actually going to lose our jobs. Titan, no, we're actually going to have more work. Titan, really? Titan, as the undead Titan stonemasons said, their workload had sharply increased. Because they would be turning these new golems into ornaments. I'm going to attach these golems to the outer walls and the walls of the stone buildings. I want you to work on them so that they look like decorations at a glance. Vandali, that's quite fancy. We don't mind, but is there a reason you're doing that? Will it make the golems stronger or something? Titan, no, it won't. They'll just look like decorations. Vandali, the stonemasons looked puzzled, but once the decorated golems were actually set in place, the effect would be clear. Simply stationing golems near the walls and buildings would be sufficient as a defense against intruders. But golems decorating the walls and buildings would look like simple ornaments, and golems embedded into the walls which had also been thickened would look like mere sculptures. If an enemy army tried to close in on the defenseless walls, they could be taken by surprise by the enemies springing forth from the walls. And I can do things like have the sculptures keep up their act, wait for the enemy to set up ladders to climb the walls and then make them destroy the ladders. Vandali, that's dirty Titan, holy sun, will the fortress and buildings not become more fragile once the golems start moving? Titan, I'll add more stone to the walls to compensate when setting up the golems, so it will be fine. Also, the golems on the houses and buildings will be just for scouting, so they'll be things like faces and eyes. Vandali, with that, it will be unlikely that the enemy will destroy them. Titan, Vandali had thought of the idea from security setups used on Earth where security guards and cameras would be positioned in inconspicuous places. And I don't have to pay any attention to the golems acting as security guards and cameras, so it's not mentally taxing on me. It would improve Talesheim's scenery as well, so there were only benefits to this method. Furthermore, Vandali discovered that taking too much of the stone cliffs in Garen's Valley would cause them to become unable to mine any more stone for a while. It was as if there was a transparent barrier that created a dead end, preventing him from going any further. It looked like he could continue forward, but the background scenery might as well have been painted on a solid wall. But the dungeon would return to normal in a few days' time, so there was no need to worry about the stone running out. The others weren't taking it easy while Vandali and the stonemasons worked busily. I'm going to request something a little dangerous. I want everyone to place the golems and undead that I made to keep watch in the places that I tell you. Vandali, they were strengthening their defenses, but the fact that they didn't know when enemies would come would be a source of insecurity and inconvenience. That was why Vandali requested that golems be stationed to keep watch. There were 3 possible routes that enemies could take. Leave it to me, Vandali-sama. Eleonora, the first was the route that Eleonora had used to cross the mountain range. This route was relatively safe, but many of Sir Krent's subordinate vampires had been defeated along the way. Only noble-born vampires and beings stronger than them would be able to use this route safely. Eleonora declared that this route would be absolutely impossible for normal humans to use. Considering that, Eleonora realized just how abnormal Vandali was to have crossed the mountain range with 600 ghouls and not sustained a single casualty. Is there a need to watch this area as well? Zran, there are vampires worshipping the evil god in the Orborm kingdom as well. Vandali, the second was the tunnel that led to the Hartner Duchy in the Orborm kingdom. It was collapsed for now, but it could be reconstructed from Hartner Duchy and vampire underlings might be sent through it. If the first princess was still alive on the other side, there was no guarantee that the vampires wouldn't utilize her feelings for her home country. And the third route was the most difficult. So you want us to look for a tunnel that connects to the Mage nation. Does such a thing even exist? Zran, I can't rule out that possibility. Vandali, there were no legends that said there were tunnels in the mountain range leading to the Mage nation. But since there was one that led to the Orborm kingdom, there was a high chance that there was one that had not yet been discovered. It would be a tunnel over 100,000 years old, after all. Back then, the Amid Empire and Orborm Kingdom hadn't existed, and it might have been constructed even before the goddess Vida created the vampires. If that were the case, it made sense to think that tunnels would have been built to the west as well as the east. Who could have built such tunnels was still a mystery, however. They would have to traverse lands full of devil's nests with uncontrolled monster populations to search for ruins that could be anywhere. Borkus would lead Vigoro and Zadyrus in performing this task, and even Bone Wolf and the other undead would be dispatched so that they would be fully prepared. I don't mind. But make sure you have miso, fish sauce and especially katsuobushi waiting for me. If you're going to make adventurers work, you have to reward them. Borkus, do you like katsuobushi? Vandali, yeah, it makes the soup taste nice if you boil it, and it makes a good ingredient. Don't need to put any effort in. Borkus, the katsuobushi was an unfinished product that was simply dried without being smoked, but as Borkus said, it made a good addition to soups. I want to perfect katsuobushi by the end of the year, too. Vandali, it's imperfect. I'm looking forward to the finished product. Borkus, leaving that aside, I'll be having you place goblin skeleton skulls, rockillums disguised as rocks and woodgolems disguised as dead branches. Vandali, all of them were objects that could be held in one hand. They were also things that would not be strange to find lying around anywhere. If the appraisal spell was cast they would be discovered, but surely nobody would go around casting this spell on every rock, branch and goblin skull lying on the ground. The mountain range was a place where monsters struggled violently to survive. Nobody would have the time to do that. Well, there was a chance that a golem or undead would be unfortunate enough to be destroyed by a stray monster, but that was why they would be placed in sets of 3. If one of them were to break, they simply needed to be replaced. Incidentally, Vandali had decided to abandon the route used by the Mage Shield Nation's army 200 years ago. According to Eleonora, a pair of hurricane dragons inhabited the area surrounding that route. In order to simultaneously battle against 2 dragons above rank 10 and win in an environment where the only footholds were precipitous, fragile cliffs, a party of S-class adventurers would need to be formed. This would be difficult for the current Amid Empire, even if they expended all of their resources to do so. It would be difficult for the vampires as well. Eleonora had said that it would be possible for a pure-breed vampire like Berkine to defeat them, but the signs of such a battle would likely be visible from Talersheim. Bright flashes of light, explosions and the sound of parts of the mountain range crumbling would be very noticeable. It was also possible for enemies to make a detour into the southern regions of the Barngaia continent and then pass through the boundary mountain range from there, but apparently it would be suicidal for even a pure-breed vampire to journey into those regions. Those regions contain dragons and giants of even higher ranks than those found in the mountain range, and there is even apparently a palace of demons. Eleonora, there were also countless unexplored devil's nests and large organizations of monsters such as noble orc empires. They weren't exactly Vandali's allies, but they served as a very effective protective wall. Well, because of them, it was impossible for Vandali to go and look for the vampires who worshipped Vida. Well then, please get to work. Vandali, it took less than a month for all of these tasks to be completed other than the discovery of a tunnel leading to the Mage Shield Nation. Vandali would have Eleonora and Zran's party join up with Borkus's and continue searching for this 100,000-year-old tunnel. While they're doing that, we're going to build a second and third outer wall. Also, we will be developing weapons. Vandali, Botchan, are you planning to work yourself to death? Saria, it's alright, I'll rest properly on my days off. Vandali, the only ones who had visited Talersheim in the last 200 years were Vandali and the ghouls, and the vampires led by Eleonora. And apart from Eleonora, all of the vampires were now dead. It wouldn't be easy to immediately tell that the number of Talersheim's walls had increased from the city's slightly different appearance. The second wall would be built sturdy like the first, golems would be set up on it and slots through which arrows could be fired would be included. The third wall would be tall enough to conceal the first and second walls, but constructed in a way that would make it look fragile and easily collapsible. I was thinking that if I put mud all over them and have undead vines crawl over their surface, it would have the appearance I want. Vandali, if the Mage Shield Nation came, they wouldn't see the holes in the wall that should be there according to their records of past events, but they might let their guard down because the wall looked so fragile. Of course, Vandali would build the whole wall out of golems so that the wall would maintain itself without actually crumbling. So the wall itself will turn into soldiers when the time comes. But vampires that are noble-born or greater can fly through the sky, can't they? Like Eleonora-san. Saria, that's why I'll be making anti-air weapons. Creating undead that can fly would take time, after all. Vandally, it would be a different story if he only needed a few, but to make dozens, hundreds of undead like Bone Bird from bone remains and raise them until they were able to fly, he would need a lot of time. There was the option of turning fresh corpses of monsters such as wyverns into flying undead, but getting those numbers would still take time, and if they were completely destroyed, it would take time to replace them. He did consider making hundreds of undead from small creatures like small birds and insects, but in this world, becoming an undead didn't necessarily make the creature stronger. Even if he turned winged insects and beetles into undead, there was a high chance that they wouldn't even be able to bite through the enemy's skin. And since noble-born vampires were proficient with magic, they could easily be wiped out in an instant by a single wide area attack. And turning that many insects and small birds into undead would actually be likely to cause Vandally to work himself to death. I could probably use the corpses of insect-type monsters, but well, I suppose once I've set everything else up, I can take my time gathering them. Vandally, more importantly, Vansama, what about the new weapons that we will be assisting you with? Terra, if it's working with metal, leave it to this old man. Datara, I'm planning to have you build some crossbows. Vandally, Terra and the undead titan blacksmith Datara gave Vandally odd looks. Crossbows? Ah, you mean those? Terra, what are you going to do with something like that? Datara, crossbows already existed in the world of Lambda. However, they weren't very popular or in demand. Crossbows are accurate weapons with a slow rate of fire, but with their strings wound back, even frail women and the elderly can use them. However, skills and martial abilities exist in this world. A high level in theatre skill increases accuracy and power with a bow, and with increased attribute values from gaining levels, even a woman with slender arms can draw the bowstring of a large bow. And with martial skills, it is possible to achieve superhuman feats such as rapid consecutive fire and firing with enough precision to thread a needle. Crossbows receive a bonus to accuracy from theatre skill, but martial skills cannot be used due to their structure. One does not physically use one's hands pull the string back, so increased attribute values make no difference to their power. Because of this, even soldiers do not use them, let alone adventurers. As they are easy to use, ordinary people sometimes purchase them to have just in case, but even then, it is more common to buy regular bows and arrows, as this is the cheaper option. Thus, crossbows are known as weapons only used by the eccentric in the world of Lambda, and apparently it is common for weapon stores in even larger cities to not have them in stock. It would be better to hand out good bows and arrows rather than crossbows. Datara, no, I'm not going to hand out the crossbows to everyone. I'm going to turn the crossbows themselves into undead. Vandally would make spirits haunt the completed crossbows, creating cursed weapons. Cursed weapons are weak, rank 2 monsters consisting of weapons possessed by spirits that move on their own. Normally, they would be unreliable even against normal soldiers, let alone vampires. However, crossbows fire projectiles capable of piercing through plate armor with the pull of a trigger. They are also highly accurate. Because cursed weapons don't use martial skills to begin with, there are no drawbacks. The problem would be making sure they were loaded, but if Vandally installed each of them with a golem arm responsible for reloading and placed them on the walls, the city's rooftops and the royal castle, that problem would be solved. Once this was complete, he would have tireless archers that would shoot enemies to death until running out of projectiles to fire, undetectable through detect presence and capable of seeing in the dark. Vandally planned to have projectiles with silver-plated tips for the anti-vampire crossbows installed on the upper walls and rooftops. Normally, technology would be required for this plating process, but Vandally could perform it easily by manipulating the shape of the silver with golem transmutation. Let's make ballistae and catapults as well. Vandally, you really are planning to fight a war. I cannot wait to get to work. Terra, I can make ballistae, but I can't make things like catapults. Datara, yes, I'll be in charge of making the catapults. Vandally, of course, Vandally had no prior experience in catapult building either. However, he had once seen a documentary on Earth that described how catapults were built. If he recalled, it had been a documentary in which weaponry of ancient civilizations were recreated through modern technology and then inspected in detail. It was the kind of program that would have caused Uncle to have a fit from his luxury allergy, so I remember it well. That program hadn't described every part of the building process of a catapult in detail, but it had showed the overall shape and structure of a catapult. All Vandally needed to do was recreate it with golem transmutation. and on his days off, he played with Porvina and the other children, checked Pasdia's condition and busied himself with the aging reversal of Terra, which he had been procrastinating doing. Before he knew it, it was summer already. The levels of the rapid healing, status effect resistance, death attribute magic, chant revocation, automatic mana recovery, surpass limits, gloom transmutation, no attribute magic, mana control, carpentry, engineering and alchemy skills have increased. You have acquired the multicast skill. The ranks of Zadaris, New Aza, Bone Man, Bone Wolf, Bone Monkey, Bone Bear, Bone Bird, Braga, Zendo, Memadiga, Ritu and Saria have increased. Name, Vandali Race, Damper, Dark Elf Age, 4 years old. Title: Ghoul King. Job, Death Attribute Mage level, 39. Job history, non-attributes, Vitality, 69. Mana, 144,596,652. Strength, 52. Agility, 31. Stamina, 56. Intelligence, 157. Passive skills, Superhuman Strength, Level 1. Rapid Healing, Level 3, Level Up. Death Attribute Magic, Level 5, Level Up. Status Effect Resistance, Level 5, Level Up. Magic Resistance, Level 1. Dark Vision Mental Corruption, Level 10. Death Attribute Charm, Level 4. Chant Revocation, Level 3, Level Up. Strength and Followers, Level 5. Automatic Mana Recovery, Level 3, Level Up. Active Skills, Blood Sucking, Level 3. Surpass Limits, Level 4, Level Up. Gloom Transmutation, Level 4, Level Up. No Attribute Magic, Level 3, Level Up. Mana Control, Level 3, Level Up. Spirit Form, Level 2. Carpentry, Level 4, Level Up. Engineering, Level 3, Level Up. Cooking, Level 1. Alchemy, Level 3, Level Up. Unarmed Fighting Technique, Level 1, New. Soul Break, Level 1, New. Multicast, Level 1, New. Curses, experience gained in previous life not carried over. Cannot learn existing jobs. Unable to gain experience independently. Monster explanation, vampires. This is the race born between the goddess Veda and the undead champion Zakat. While not technically monsters, many nations and societies treat them as monsters, and thus they are explained as monsters here. There are currently 3 kinds of vampires: purebreed, noble-born and subordinate. Their communities are built and managed as strict vertically structured societies. The majority of vampires encountered and reported to the Adventurers Guild are subordinate vampires. Encounters with noble-born vampires are very rarely reported. Although vampires are monsters, they are capable of possessing jobs as they are also blood-related to the goddess. Due to this, the skills they possess vary significantly compared to other monsters. Subordinate vampires alone are powerful adversaries, and noble-born vampires are a threat equivalent to or even greater than dragons. Because of this, the Adventurers Guild recommends that adventurers report any sightings of vampires to the guild rather than try to defeat them on their own. There are large differences between individual vampires, but according to the Adventurers Guild, subordinate vampires are a minimum of rank 3. Noble-born vampires are defined as vampires of rank 7 and above. Subordinate vampires only possess physical vampiric powers, but when their rank increases, they gain skills such as beast transformation and clone, making them extremely dangerous beings. It has been confirmed that they have race titles such as Vampire Slaves, Vampire Lycans and Vampire Rebels after their rank increases. Noble-born vampires possess magical powers, and depending on the individual, may even possess some kind of demon eyes. They tend to place importance on studying magic diligently, but that does not make them physically inferior to subordinate vampires. Because of this, superior individuals master both magic and martial skills and possess high base attribute values, making them nightmarish creatures. Incidentally, there is a misconception that all noble-born vampires have demon eyes of charming, paralysis or mind reading, but demon eyes are in fact a unique skill that only a handful of individuals possess. This misconception is likely caused by those witnessing noble-born vampires casting spells that have similar effects to such demon eyes. Most noble-born vampire race titles follow the aristocratic system used in human societies. Inexperienced rank 6 vampires are just vampires, but they are vampire leaders at rank 7, vampire barons at rank 8, and so on. All of these vampires have a common weakness to sunlight, silver and attacks of light attribute magic, which is governed by the god of law and fate, Alda. Depending on their family and the evil god they worship, They may possess additional weaknesses such as not being able to enter buildings they are not invited into and weaknesses to garlic and running water. There is almost no information available about pure-breed vampires. The only thing that is known is that even the highest-rank noble-born vampire with the race title of Vampire Emperor would bow and swear loyalty to a pure breed. Furthermore, Serkrent was a rank 7 vampire leader. His talent was clearly inferior to that of Eleonora, who became a rank 8 vampire baroness in the space of a few years. Chapter 47, Let's launch things with a high amount of bloodthirst. The bathhouse was currently the only functional facility in the royal castle of Taylorsheim. As there was no functioning national government, this was the only facility of any use. That was a good bath, ghoul woman. The massage golems that the king made for us were good too, weren't they? Ghoul woman, really? I found Thegic zithing that made bubbles come out to be better. Ghoul woman, the ghouls who had only ever bathed in cold water before coming to Taylorsheim were totally engrossed in submerging themselves in hot water. There were some golem products that Vandali had come up with, but the hot baths seemed to be the most pleasurable thing after all. Oh yes, have you heard? The rumors that Chief Terra has been summoned into the king's bedroom every day recently. Ghoul woman, I've heard about it, but doesn't he just want her company? The king is only 4 years old, after all. I've heard that he gets lonely easily, too. And she's not the chief anymore, she's the foreman, right? Ghoul woman. That's right, but I'm more used to calling her Chief-Ghoul woman. As the two ghoul women walked along during their conversation, Terra, the subject of their discussion, ran across in front of them. Huh? Foreman-Ghoul woman. Immediately afterwards, Vandali passed across them as well. For some reason, he was crawling across the ceiling silently using all 4 limbs. Ghoul woman. As the two of them were rendered speechless at the sight of the Ghoul King, Terra came back. She had been captured by Vandali. No. Please let me go for tonight. Terra. No, we have to test the catapults firing tomorrow, so let's do 10 more today. Vandali walked away, holding the teary-eyed Terra in the air with telekinesis. Watching him leave, the two ghoul women swallowed before speaking again. It's not because he's lonely? Ghoul woman. Vandali was next to Terra, who was lying in an unladylike, spread eagle position while breathing wildly. Theouth transformation will be complete in a few more days. Let's do our best. Vandali, Terra, seemingly exhausted and unable to get up. Terra let out a strange sound. Terra had experienced many things in the past, but Theouth transformation caused sensations she had never felt before to run through her entire body. The unpleasant feeling of something foreign crawling around inside her body, and the pleasure of having her entire body massaged, causing her muscle tension to vanish. She was in an incomprehensible state where her body was full of energy, but at the same time, it felt as if she had just run a marathon. The fact that she had learned a secret that was only between Vandali and Zadiris up until now made her feel younger as well. These were only good things for Terra, but, it's true that I don't get tired easily, run out of breath or get blurry eyes anymore, and my back no longer hurts, but Terra's aging had progressed further than Vandali had initially thought. As to be expected of someone over 260 years old. Should we reverse another 10 years of age? Vandali, hi. Let me go for tonight. Terra, the pure-breed vampires who only gathered together once every few millennia had assembled in one of the numerous meeting places for the vampires who worshipped Hukaka, the evil god of joyful life. Something that hadn't happened for tens of thousands of years was taking place. A crooked 7-pointed star had been drawn on the floor using special, freshly drained blood. The 3 pure-breed vampires raised their arms towards the center of this star, curling their hands into fists. Ternisha, pour my sacred blood. Ternisha, a drop of blood fell from in between Ternisha's fingers. Her eyes were shining like those of a child about to open a box containing a present. Gubberman, pour my sacred blood. Gubberman, an old man who looked like a withered tree, rolled his large eyes. A drop of blood fell from in between his fingers as well. His unknown desires were showing unpleasantly in his eyes. Berkine, pour my sacred blood. Berkine, and then red blood also fell from Berkine's white hand. His eyes were ominously empty. His lips that normally give a gentlemanly smile were pressed together tightly, as if he were enduring something unpleasant. These 3 pure-breed vampires gathering in one place and cooperating to carry out a task was something that had not happened in tens of thousands of years. A single pure-breed vampire possessed enough power to defeat a party of adventurers made up of superhuman A-class adventurers alone. as well as acting as the rulers of this vampire community. They had received the divine protection of Hiroto, the evil god of joyful life, and were equivalent to being his subordinate gods. Just what kind of ritual were they carrying out? It seems that the ritual has failed. That damn Sir Krent, has he betrayed us? Gubberman looked at the 7-pointed star that showed no response whatsoever and raised the ends of his lips in a smile, exposing his pointed fangs. Well then, next is Eleonora. Get on with it. Turnisha, yes. Berkine. As Turnisha pressed Berkine to perform the next step, he took an unconscious child from a noble-born vampire who had been waiting nearby and cut off its head, using the side of his hand as a blade. Blood gushed onto the floor, glowing mysteriously and crawling around as if alive to form another 7-pointed star. The three of them each gave a drop of their blood as they had done earlier. However, the result was the same. Nothing happened. It seems that Eleonora has betrayed us as well. Turnisha, Kukaku, if they were dead, they would have been revived here as undead, after all. Gubberman, this ritual was one that summoned the souls of dead noble-born vampires and resurrected them as undead. It required the decapitation of a child born to a woman who had only ever known one man, and all three of the pure-breed vampires needed to contribute a drop of their own blood to the 7-pointed triangle drawn with that child's blood. Even though this ritual would revive a noble-born vampire as an undead, the resulting undead would be vastly weaker than the live vampire, so it was hardly worth the trouble. The reason this ritual was being carried out was because a major incident had occurred a month ago. Slay the damp born between the subordinate vampire Valen and the dark elf Darsa. That was the divine message that had recently been given to the pure-breed vampires by Hiroto, the evil god of joyful life. They had given the task of slaying the damper in question to Sir Krent and Eleonora around a year ago. As vampires' sense of time was different from that of humans, they had thought that perhaps Sir Krent and Eleonora were having some difficulty with the task, so it hadn't really occurred to them that they should investigate the situation. As the problematic pure-breed vampires who worshipped Vida had showed no signs of movement, there hadn't been anything to get impatient about, either. However, things changed when the evil god sent the divine message directly. Even though the evil god had given the pure-breed vampires his divine protection, it was unusual for him to send them a divine message. The evil god had given them a direct order to slay the damp. It was a significant enough event that even Gubberman, who normally refrained from attending these meetings, had stopped admiring his collection to come out here. They had then tried to contact Eleonora and the others who had been sent to slay the damp, but it was already too late. That was why this ritual had been carried out. If they had killed the damp but lost their lives in the process, they would be revived as undead and be able to report the fact. If they could not be revived, it would be clear that they had betrayed the vampires. It seems that we've been underestimating this damp. Perhaps he has captured his would-be assassins alive and is now tormenting them, but either way, they have failed. Turnisha, Sir Krent was not a particularly excellent individual, but he was still a moderately useful man. If the damp has made him betray us, he must possess a considerable amount of power. Gubberman nodded in response to Turnisha's words, excited about the fact that his subordinate might have betrayed him. Either the damp had prepared something that forced Sir Krent to obey him even if it made his own parent and every noble-born and subordinate vampire his enemy, or he was powerful enough to convince Sir Krent that doing so was the better choice. Phew ha ha. The corpse of such a damp is something that I would like to acquire. I cannot help but be excited by thoughts of what kind of undead I will turn him into. For Gubberman, who had made it his life's hobby to collect the corpses of heroes and use them to create undead, it appeared that the evil god of joyful life had given him an indication as to which corpse should be added to his collection next. A damper so dangerous that the evil god personally wished for his demise. Wouldn't that be an even more valuable addition than some A-class adventurer? It was unclear as to what made him so dangerous, or perhaps he had simply incurred the evil god's wrath, but he had caught Hiroto's attention. Do your best then. I'm not really interested. No, I am a little. That damp was leading hundreds of ghouls, wasn't he? Making undead from ghouls sounds interesting. Turnisha was also interested in creating undead, but she did so to create works of art. Unlike Gubberman, she wasn't particularly concerned with the strength and fame of the materials used to create the undead. The theme of her creations in the past few centuries had been familiars, so she had no interest in a damp whose father had already been disposed of and whose mother had been burned at the stake. But it was possible that the grey-brown skin of the ghouls would look attractive once they were turned into undead. That was what her twisted inspiration was whispering to her. And as for Berkine, Sheet Berkine, he quietly whispered a single word. Hearing a word that Berkine wouldn't utter with his usual demeanor, the noble-born vampires who had been standing by with empty cages in their hands opened their eyes wide in surprise. Berkine-sama? Hichich. Vampire. Berkine unconsciously seized the head of the noble-born vampire who had spoken his name and raised this thing into the air. Berkine-sama, whatever are you doing? Gugge? Vampire. Berkine swung the panicking thing around wildly. Damn it. My Eleonora. My toy that I chose from among dozens of humans. He stole her from me. That accursed damper. Berkine, being shaken in every direction, Thethinjin his hand struck the floor and walls numerous times, causing various pieces to break off and scatter everywhere. I was going to toy with her for centuries to coom. I was going to convince her that SHE was special, make her conceited and then break her by scraping OFF flesh piece by piece. How unfair of him to take her from me before I could get to the good part. That damned, accursed, unforgivable damper. Berkine, what? Hi. Berkine-sama? Vampire. Please stop. Berkine-sama. What is there, Jaho? Vampire. Hi. Berkine-sama has gone mad. Run away, run away. Vampire. No. Vampire. Berkine went into a frenzy with disheveled hair, bloodshot eyes and a foaming mouth. His appearance was no longer that of a young nobleman or even that of an angry beast, but that of a broken madman. He swung his fist wildly, destroying a pillar that had barely avoided destruction up until now, and then stopped, breathing heavily with his shoulders heaving. Ha. Berkine. He looked up into the sky to see the beautiful, blue-white glow of the moon and the sparkling stars that accompanied it. As Berkine threw away Thething the head of the noble-born vampire, which was already in a poor enough state to make it impossible to tell whether it was even a man or a woman, he calmly spoke to Turnisha and Gubberman as if nothing had happened. So that brings up the question of what we will do next, Turnisha. Do you have any ideas? Berkine. He took a silk handkerchief from his breast pocket, cleaned his mouth and hands with it and quickly adjusted his hair with his fingers. Ah, you're back. It didn't last very long this time, did it? Turnisha. The last time, you were in that state for days. I was considering whether Turnisha and I needed to stop you. Gubberman. Foo, my apologies. Berkine. Berkine had completely reverted to his usual self, but his surroundings were in a pitiful state. The meeting chamber that previously looked as if it were from inside the large mansion of a nobleman had now turned into a mountain of rubble, other than two circular areas roughly a meter wide around Gubberman and Turnisha. Blood and severed limbs sprawled over the rubble. Heads and fragments of heads littered the ground. Half of the noble-born vampires and the majority of the subordinate vampires had been turned into silent corpses. Well, it's fine. I thought that this would happen, so I didn't bring my servants to today's meeting other than some subordinate vampires to fill their numbers. Turnisha. Kakaka, well done. But all of my noble-born vampires were present today. Gubberman. I have done a terrible thing. How many of them did I crush? Berkine. Don't worry. I was thinking of cutting down those that were below average so that I do not end up with another individual like Sir Krent. You have merely made the selection for me by cutting down those who could not survive your temper. Gubberman. I see. How terrible of you to use me like that. Berkine. By the way, why are you asking me? I did say that I'm interested, but I'd be happy as long as I can skin the ghouls when the damper's dead. Turnisha. It's simple. First was Gubberman's subordinate Sir Krent, then my Eleonora, so you're next aren't you? Berkine. You're right. I suppose I won't look very good if I don't make any moves. Turnisha. Turnisha took a moment to think. Well then, I suppose we can mobilize the army. There's a guy in the Amid Empire's army that wants eternal life. A convenient guy who will do anything we tell him as long as we turn him into a vampire. Turnisha. We'll exert our influence on him, and a few other noble families and high officials. If we do that, we should be able to set the army after the damper in about 2 years. An average noble-born vampire, another noble-born who was quite exceptional for her age and a few dozen subordinate vampires, was it? The damper disposed of that many of our forces. I don't know what methods he used to fight them, but it was enough for the evil god himself to send a divine message. I'm sure he used a very abnormal method. So let's try attacking with numbers. Things will surely go well if we use thousands of soldiers, knights, adventurers and the high priest that burned his mother at the stake. If we hide our subordinates among such an army, there will be no chance for him at all. 100 noble-born vampires would be too many, but a few dozen should be enough. Can you give me that information? I'm sure those who worship Veda can't make use of it if I break it with my own hands once I'm finished with it. Turnisha, I do not mind, said Berkine in response to Turnisha's request. It was information that the guys worshipping Veda are fairly likely to know anyway. Berkine, yes, if Turnisha destroys it, we can be certain. But it is a serious matter to mobilize the army. You were quite poor at utilizing humans, were you not? Gubberman, what? You don't consider yourself good at it either, do you? Turnisha, hi. That is right, I am also poor at using them. Gubberman, in any case, it seems that you have an idea. I want you to let me know when your plan begins to progress. Now that our God has given us a divine message, there is a need for us to cooperate. Berkine, that is right, Hiroto-Kakasama's punishment would take a toll on our bodies, after all. Gubberman, the three of them laughed in agreement as the other vampires who had somehow managed to survive staggered to their feet. And then they began the journey to the next meeting location. They were all thinking the same thing about Hiroto-Kaka's divine message. Why would the evil god, the only existence who certainly possessed greater power than them, make the effort to send a divine message instructing them to kill the damp? For him to have done that meant that Hiroto-Kaka's attention had been drawn to the damp. A damplet was not one of his followers. In other words, couldn't this be a sign that the damp possessed something that would be a threat to Hiroto-Kaka? Some kind of power or information? In that case, if we could somehow get our hands on it, wouldn't it be possible to rule and conquer the evil god himself? Hiroto-Kaka knew that the pure-breed vampires would think this. It was only natural, they were only applying the teachings that he himself had given them. That was why Hiroto-Kaka had given them no information regarding Vandali in his divine message. A human-sized boulder flew from the catapult with a whoosh. The boulder fell accurately on top of the wooden target set up in the firing area, destroying it. Basdia, who was sitting in a chair with a monster leather parasol protecting her from the sun much like a human lady, let out a sigh of amazement as she rubbed her expanding abdomen. These catapults are amazing. They look very promising. Basdia, this is still just the test firing phase. Vandali, this was the response of Vandali, who was being thrown into the air by Porvina next to her, but he seemed not entirely unsatisfied. He was generally expressionless, had the eyes of a dead fish and a flat-toned voice, but once one got accustomed to it, it was possible to tell his emotions from his manner of speech. The slightly more carefree tone of speech he was using now was proof that he was in a good mood. The results of firing with normal projectiles are excellent. Next, I'll begin test firing with golem projectiles. Vandali, yes, ready. Porvina, as Porvina gave this vague order, the catapult moved on its own and prepared to fire. This catapult was essentially a catapult-shaped golem that Vandali had created through golem transmutation. It was no ordinary catapult, it possessed arms and wheels made of stone. It was possible to make it load projectiles, take aim and fire all on its own. And as wood had been used in the construction of its body, it had the sturdiness of metal and excellent resistance to fire. Fire. Porvina, the loyal catapult golem fired the next boulder. It flew through the sky in a trajectory similar to the previous one, but towards a different target, which had wooden dummies lined up around it for some reason and landed on top of it. And then the projectile let out a groan and stood up. Did the catapult launch a golem? Basdia, the sight of the projectile turned golem destroying the wooden dummies around it took Basdia by surprise. The golem seemed to have taken some damage from the impact of landing, but it caused no problems in combat as golems didn't feel pain or anything. This would likely be incredibly effective in a real battle. The main weakness of golems was their slow movement. This method would provide the golems with a way to attack the enemy while removing that weakness. A golem fired at the enemy this way would easily break down the front lines and then run rampant among their ranks. This would not be an easy attack to deal with. Yes. And since we might be fighting subordinate vampires, I've put silver plating on its fists and toes. Vandali, you've got attention for detail. It's exciting to see. Basdia, thank you, but it seems that the golem projectiles still have room for improvement. Vandali, do they really? Basdia, it's destroyed all of the wooden dummies set up as enemies, so as far as I can see, it's perfect. As Basdia thought this, Vandali, who was sharing the vision of the undead insects he had set up nearby, shook his head. There's one wooden dummy that has only had its legs crushed, its torso is completely unharmed. Even though I ordered the golem to kill to inflict damage in ways that would be fatal to humans. Vandally, it would be impossible for a human to enter a battle with 2 broken legs unless they were treated first. However, it would be possible for vampires to continue fighting even with both legs broken. Vandally wanted the golem to crush their heads just in case. You've got a high amount of bloodthirst, don't you, Van? Bastia, like Porvina. Porvina threw Vandally directly overhead. It seemed that she had reacted to the word high in Bastia's sentence. She had once done this inside a room, causing a stain of Vandally's nose blood to appear on the ceiling, so she had been forbidden to throw Vandally into the air indoors. She seemed to be intent on enjoying herself as much as she could today. Porvina caught Vandally as he fell onto her with a smacking sound. There's a big impact when I land, so do it more gently. Vandally, okay. Porvina, I'm begging you, I really am. Leaving that aside, I'll be starting the test firing of the special projectiles now. Vandally spoke somewhat lifelessly, and then the catapult loaded a large barrel this time. And then it was launched. It drew an arc in the air and then split into 2. What? Did it fail? Bastia, a transparent fluid spilled from within and splashed onto the ground in front of the target. No, it was quite successful. That was a barrel-shaped golem I made for spreading poison and pathogens among the enemy. After it's launched, it splits at a certain timing and spreads its contents in front of the enemy. Vandally, poison? Bastia, yes, poison. It only had water in it just now, though. Vandally, poison and pathogens could be created as long as Vandally had the mana for it. He could carry out biological terrors anywhere, anytime. He did have to be careful not to be affected by his own poison and pathogens, however. If he was afflicted by the deadly poison and disease that was powerful enough to overcome his status effect resistance skill, he would collapse immediately without even being able to cast any spells. Poison and disease, is that alright? Bastia, it's more of a problem of what I spread than how I spread it. The undead and golems will be fine, but poison and diseases will affect you and the other ghouls, after all. Vandally, it was a truly difficult problem to solve. If he was planning to spread disease, it would be best to use pathogens with high infectious capacity, but it would be pointless if Bastia and the others, especially the children with weak immune systems, were to be affected by them. It would be fine if he could use sterilization and disinfect right away, but it was impossible to know what could happen during battle. So then would poison be no better after all? But if Vigoro and the other warriors were in the battle, it couldn't be used. Maybe it will be fine if I use the same components that are in the ghoul's paralyzing venom. I wonder if there are any deadly airborne diseases that are difficult to treat, highly infectious and only affect humans. Vandally, wait a minute, that's not what I was trying to ask. I'm trying to ask if it's really alright to do that. Our enemies might be humans, right? Bastia, yes, and? Vandally replied as Porvina threw him up and down slightly more gently than earlier. It seemed that he was still unsure as to why Bastia seemed concerned. No, I'm not going to say that I have a problem with killing people, either. But won't it cause problems to kill too many? Bastia, it would be problematic to kill more than necessary, wouldn't it? Vandally nodded a few times in agreement probably. It was difficult to tell due to him being thrown up and down. It's fine. I'll be careful not to kill more than necessary, and it's not like these weapons have to be used. Mom wouldn't be happy about it, either. Vandally, Dasa wasn't a peace advocate in particular. However, she wouldn't approve of a massacre, either. She would definitely hate unnecessary murder and try to stop Vandally from performing such murder. If he actually did it, she would likely be heartbroken about it afterwards. Bastia was a ghoul who had been raised in a village where she had been taught not to fight with adventurers. It was possible that she felt very reluctant to kill humans because of this. And Vandally had no recollection of becoming a murderous fiend. He considered himself to be a normal person. People are creatures with societies, and as long as that is the case, the happiness of humans lies in those societies. Vandally's objective was to become happy and stay happy. Unnecessary murder would simply be an action that would lead him further from this goal. That's why I'll try not to kill any more than necessary. Vandally, yeah, we won't kill, you know. Porvina. Vandally and Porvina made this declaration together. But Vandally continued speaking. But if I need to slaughter every single enemy to protect everyone, I'm going to do it. So don't get angry at me if it comes to that, alright? Vandally, you got it? Porvina, he wouldn't kill people he didn't have to. However, there was a god and a religion that taught that killing every member of their races was justice, and this religion was the official religion of an entire empire. In order to survive in this world, there would be times where he would be forced to kill all of his enemies in order to survive. As Vandali told Basdia this, she seemed to get a little haughty. That's a given. If it were necessary to slaughter all of the enemies in order to protect this child and you and all the others, Van, I wouldn't hesitate. I'd gladly swing my axe at them. Bastia, what a reliable mother you are. Vandali, I am, aren't I? If you ever want to give me my child, let me know anytime. Bastia, that will be at least another 10 years from now, Vandali. As Vandali gave Bastia this response, poor Veena gave Vandali a particularly large throw towards the sky. Falling from this height would cause quite the impact, so he used flight to float gently in the air. And then he reflected upon the events of the past few months. Chapter 48, It seems I've become a place for insects. Vandali and his companions had built their walls, solidified their defenses and prepared their weapons. Undead and golems had been successfully placed for surveillance purposes at locations where vampires and humans were likely to cross the boundary mountain range. Vandali had personally tried stepping into the entrances of the route that had been used by Eleonora's party and the tunnel that led to the Hartner Duchy after the surveillance golems had been placed at these locations. There had been no particular problems on the route that Eleonora's party had used. But things had been strange at the tunnel. From the outside, the tunnel looked as if it had simply caved in, but Vandali had used golem transmutation to turn the rubble into golems and spirit form transformation to go inside and investigate. He had found that the inside of the tunnel had been destroyed too thoroughly. According to what he had heard from Nuazu and the other undead titans, 200 years ago, the first Princess Livia and the other undead titans used this tunnel to escape and then used some hidden mechanisms to seal the tunnel. But the inside of the tunnel had been like an impossible puzzle. There hadn't been a single large rock among the rubble, only large amounts of soft dirt and sand. When he had tried to remove the rubble to rebuild the tunnel, more and more dirt and sand kept falling from above. That was the state the tunnel had been in. Vandali hadn't investigated through the entire tunnel to the end, but the first few hundred meters were all in this state, even though the tunnel was covered by mountains high enough to reach the clouds. It was as if someone had used sophisticated earth attribute magic to turn the boulders and hard bedrock above the tunnel into tiny grains of sand in order to make it impossible to rebuild the tunnel. With this being the case, the tunnel would remain sealed forever if Andalia's golem transmutation skill didn't exist. It would have been completely impossible for the Mage Shield Nation army of 200 years ago to reconstruct the tunnel. Nobody knew how Princess Livia had collapsed the tunnel. It was possible that the mechanism or magic used to collapse it, which only Talersheim's royal family knew about, was just that incredible. However, Vandali found this suspicious. He wondered whether the vampires had something to do with this. If he thought about it, the commercial trade between Talersheim and the Hartner Duchy would have been nothing but an eyesore for the pure-breed vampires who worshipped the evil god and feared the pure-breed vampires who worshipped Vida that lived in the southern regions of the Barngaya continent beyond the boundary mountain range. If trading had become very prosperous in Talersheim's geographical location, the people would have eventually started exploring the southern regions of the continent. This could have caused the vampires worshipping Vida to possibly make a move. That might have been why they had chosen to mobilize the Amid Empire and the Mage Shield Nation without making any movements themselves. They had probably wanted to reduce the strength of the Empire and the Mage Shield Nation around then anyway, and with the vampires' influence extending into the Empire, starting a war would have been a simple matter. Eleonora knew nothing about this. She seemed to have been considered an individual with great promise, but she hadn't been in an important position in the community as a whole, and not even a decade had passed since she had even become a vampire. Since the vampires in the same faction that worshipped the evil god didn't seem to be on good terms with each other, it was only natural that she didn't know. Vandali stopped his speculations here. No matter how much he investigated, the truth wouldn't be clear unless he were to talk to some person or spirit who knew about the events of 200 years ago. For now, he just needed to increase his intent to kill the vampires who worshipped the evil god. And the remaining tunnel in the mountain range leading to the Mage Shield Nation was found. It had been covered by a large boulder, however. As Vandali had suspected, a tunnel had been built 100,000 years ago on this side of the mountain range as well. Borkus's party had slaughtered earth dragons, rock dragons and scattered a goblin king's large pack to find it. The dragon materials that they had brought back as souvenirs were currently in Terra's hands, being processed to create equipment. With this, Vandali's surveillance network was complete. And though they didn't possess enough fighting strength to stand against the pure-breed vampires, Everyone was improving both individually and as a whole. His powerful companions like Borkus, Eleonora and Vigoro had leveled up in the past few months, but their ranks hadn't increased. However, prior to this, Vigoro had undergone a job change from warrior to Oaksman, a job specialized in using axe techniques. He had apparently even acquired the deforestation skill as well. He had acquired it during the search for the tunnel by cutting down trees that were in the way with his axe. New Arza had become a rank 5 lich. I have finally lost the lesser from my race title. I will no longer allow Borkustono to call me a weak youngster ! He said, smiling with his face that was only made of skin and bones. Braga had become a rank 4 Black Goblin Assassin, while the other Black Goblins had become Black Goblin Scouts. They were quite the team of scouts. It seemed that Braga was walking along the path of a ninja that he had heard about from Vandali. Zemodo and Memediga had increased their ranks as well, becoming an Anubis rider and an Anubis monk respectively. Zemodo had successfully tamed a monster he had captured in a dungeon and become able to fight while using it as a mount. Memediga had apparently increased in rank while studying magic and martial skills simultaneously, shortly after she began going on dates with Berg in the Church of Vida. Was this the goddess's blessing? The Orcus Gorbo hadn't increased his rank yet, but his body had grown enough for him to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 3-meter-tall Borkus, and he had grown even stronger and sturdier. Most importantly, he had found a Gigu in a forest and captured it alive. Because of this, Talersheim now had a supply of fresh eggs. Everyone was becoming stronger by increasing their ranks, leveling up and improving their skills. With this, unlike when they had been forced to escape the Devil's Nest forest, they were capable of fighting. Vandali wanted more anti-vampire weapons prepared if possible, but he lacked time and, more importantly, skills and technology for those. However, fortunately, it seemed that pure-breed vampires and noble-born vampires who had lived a long time had an unusually slow perception of time, so when they made a move, they would use a plan that would take years, or several months at least to carry out. Vampires had long lifespans and surrounded themselves with the company of other vampires, so their sense of time was very different from that of humans. They often referred to events over 10 years ago as como a little while ago. It was still unlikely that Vandali would be left alone for 10 years, but Eleonora estimated that they would take 2 to 5 years to make their next move as long as there were no special reasons to act faster. And so Vandali decided that he should start taking action to achieve his own goals. He would acquire Vida's legacy, the resurrection device beneath Talersheim's royal castle, and resurrect Darsa. I have to become stronger for that as well. Vandali. In order to do that, the half-destroyed dragon golem that still protected it needed to be defeated. But if that was all, Vandali wouldn't need to become stronger. He would simply need to stand at the back and support Borkus, Eleonora, Vigoro, Zadiris and the others. Darsa's resurrection was at stake, but there was no need for him to be positioned at the front. However, only Vandali was capable of melting the ice that sealed the chamber guarded by the dragon golem, and when he had gone to melt it, he had felt a powerful response from his constantly active danger sense, death. That was proof that the dragon golem had noticed Vandali and was preparing to attack him the moment he tried to enter the chamber. In other words, even if he was planning to leave all of the fighting to Borkus and the others, there was a high chance that he would receive some kind of attack as soon as he opened the chamber and be killed immediately. Of course, Vandali had become much stronger than he was the first time he had seen the dragon golem through the wall of ice. He had gone through a job change and leveled up. His attribute values and his skills had increased. The soul break that he had acquired after destroying Serkrent's soul was a particularly powerful skill. Upon careful inspection, it had turned out to be a skill that dealt damage to mana equal to the amount of damage to vitality that Vandali inflicted. If he dealt damage to vampires with this, their mana would stay damaged even if their vitality recovered immediately, so this skill would be effective to use in battles against vampires. He would even be able to drain the dragon golem of the mana it used as its power source if he could damage it. But even so, he still felt a powerful reaction from danger sense, death. That was why he needed to become stronger. That was why he decided to resume his dungeon clearing that he had put on hold. The dungeon we're going into is a class dungeon. It'll be on another level from the D-class dungeons you've already been in, kid. Don't let your guard down. Borkus was doing his best to make a strict face, but the remaining half of his lips were raised in a smirk. Vandali didn't comment on this. Yes. I'm relying on you to guide me through. Vandali. The dungeon they would be clearing was Borkus's sub-dragon Savannah. It was a dungeon discovered by Borkus's ancestors, countless generations ago. Unlike the D-class Kirin's Valley and Duran's Aquatic Cavern, nobody usually entered this dungeon other than adventurers. No matter how strong titans were, this dungeon was too dangerous for anyone other than a genuine adventurer to venture into. That's right, this place is really harsh. There are a lot of flaws and the monsters are strong. There aren't many monsters that use attacks that inflict status effects or problematic traps, but the monsters are strong. Vigoro, you have said the same thing twice. Are you drunk? Zadyrus, but the monsters really are strong. Even though our ranks increased, it's tough for us from the 3rd floor onwards if Vigoro-san isn't with us. Saria, Jiayu. From the 11th floor onwards, it was difficult battle after difficult battle. Bone Man. The members of this exploration party were the rank 6 members Vigoro and Zadyrus, as well as Rita, Saria, Bone Man and Bone Bird who had become rank 5. Other than the inclusion of Borkus, their guide, they had a suitable amount of fighting strength for clearing this dungeon. As its name suggested, Borkus's Subdragon Savannah was a dungeon with many savannas in its terrain. Some floors had forests, rivers and lakes, but they were mostly savannas. The scenery was just like in a movie. Vandali whispered these words as he released a mana bullet. Dinosaurs roamed across the ground that was covered in thick, verdant grass that looked like a green carpet. It was as if Vandali had traveled back in time to the Cretaceous period. It was a truly moving sight. Even as he noticed the groups of dinosaurs coming to attack, Vandali's sense of wonder didn't disappear. Oh oi, if you don't hurry and crush that raptor, you've already done it. Borkus, as Borkus relaxed at the back and watched, one of the raptors that had slipped through the front line tried to attack Vandali, only to be turned into mincemeat by a mana bullet. Normal mana bullets weren't this powerful, they were slower than arrows and attacks of other attributes of magic, difficult to fire in a controlled trajectory and easy to predict. It was a spell full of flaws, but Vandali had poured 10,000 mana into a single bullet to release a projectile larger than himself that should have been called a super mana cannon. Its size made it hard to avoid and lately he had been twisting the shape of the mana to alter the projectile's trajectory. Because of this, it was even able to bring down a fast-moving raptor. I suppose the others won't have any problems on the 1st floor since they've been in here before. Borkus, though Vigoro, Zadyrus, Bone Man and the others were still inexperienced in his eyes, they were slaughtering the raptors with ease. The boss of this group of raptors was a rank 4 huge raptor that was larger and more intelligent than the rest, but they were fighting it safely. If there had been a few less raptors, Vandali would likely not have had to do anything. Well, this is where it starts. Borkus. The monsters appearing in the earlier floors of Borkus's Subdragon Savannah were mostly similar to the dinosaurs that Vandali knew, or large reptile-type monsters such as crocodiles and turtles. It seemed that these monsters that had scales like dragons and yet weren't dragons had been named Subdragons by the people of Talersheim. Incidentally, wyverns and similar monsters were apparently also categorized as subdragons. Indeed, it wouldn't be strange to think of them as being related to pterosaurs. As they descended from the 1st floor to the 2nd and then from the 2nd to the 3rd, the battles with the monsters naturally became harsher. From the 5th floor onwards, there were no rank 3 monsters appearing at all and there were rank 5 monsters among the monsters that did appear. Giant. Oh, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Vandali. An enormous, triangular silhouette, fangs sharp and long enough to be used as tips of spears, powerful rear legs and short front legs. Probably the most well-known carnivorous dinosaur on Earth, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. This was an armored Tyrannosaurus, a monster with a higher rank. It was a dinosaur covered in hard scales and a carapace like an ankylosaur, but it was apparently a rank 5 monster in Lambda. Vandali found it strange to think that this enormous carnivore was weaker than Bogogan and only as powerful as a wyvern, but it turned out that this wasn't so strange after all. Jiayu. You will become provisions for my lord! Flowing water! Slicing moon. Bone Man avoided the armored Tyrannosaurus's biting attack with flowing movements and half severed its neck with a slash that drew a circular path in the air. After successfully increasing his rank when Vandali had added more spirits to his body, he had trained even further and become a rank 5 skeleton baron. His swordsmanship skill was level 5, while his other skills such as archery and shield technique had reached level 4. The armored Tyrannosaurus was supposed to be of the same rank as him, but it was only capable of simple movements, perhaps due to its overly active instinct to attack. Bone Man performed complicated, mysterious movements that seemed to ignore the normal rules of motion as if they came naturally to him. This was the difference between them. My lord, what shall we do with this corpse? Bone Man, I already have a Tyrannosaurus zombie, so I suppose we'll use it for materials and food. Which parts of the Tyrannosaurus monsters were tasty, again? Vandally, I believe it was the area around their legs. Bone Man, they took the armored Tyrannosaurus's magic stone, stripped it of its scales and carapace and then took a break as they ate the meat of its legs. The mid-boss on the 10th floor was a herbivorous dinosaur. But it wasn't the enormous, long-necked Brontosaurus that Vandally had been hoping to see. It was a ferocious triceratops that even a wild boar would flee from. Boo-oo-oo. Flashes of lightning appeared around the horn on the tip of the triceratops's nose and the pair of horns on its forehead as it let out a roar that sounded somewhat similar to that of a cow and prepared to charge. As to be expected from a creature of another world. Vandally, this triceratops had undergone a fantasy-like evolution. It is a trihorn that has increased its rank and contains wind attribute mana in its horns. Leave this to us. Saria, we have defeated it before. Rita, Saria and Rita, the living armor sisters, stepped forward. They looked significantly different from how they had looked before. They had increased their ranks to become rank 5 magic high leg armor and magic bikini armor, and finally acquired their spirit form skill. As a result, they had visible bodies instead of just being suits of armor, bodies that were like clouds of white mist with no outline, that were just barely human-shaped. Their spirit form was vague and seemed as if it would be blown away by a strong wind, but their other skills had increased as well. Though they were rank 5, the two sisters could hold their own against rank 6 enemies. The promising-looking pair charged directly at the trihorn from the front dash. Kaiwa, Saria/Rita, as they leapt up, their gauntlets that were still clutching their weapons, their greaves and their iron boots separated and flew into the air. Huh? Vandally, they died? Have they died? Vigoro, Geee. Bonebird, hey, isn't this looking bad? Porcus, Vandally was surprised. The two men and Bonebird began to panic. However, Zadyrus didn't panic or make any noise, instead letting out an exasperated sigh. Another of their ill-humored jokes again. Zadyrus, as she whispered this, Rita and Saria's gauntlets and iron boots and turned in the air and they gripped their weapons, the halberd and the glaive, once more. Boo-oo-oo. As the trihorn who believed it had defeated them let out a roar of victory, they thrust their weapons into its neck, back and belly and cut it to pieces. And then the trihorn stopped breathing and the pieces of armor that had separated reunited once more, restoring Saria and Rita to normal. We're done here. This method is effective against the trihorn. Saria, I suppose it thinks that it has defeated us once we separate our parts. Its movements stop and it's full of openings, so it's a piece of cake. Rita, I suppose you're getting thirsty now. Here. It's freshly squeezed. Botchin. Saria, Vandally took the wooden cup full of fresh trihorn blood from the two sisters who showed no signs of shame. I understand why you did it, but wasn't the screaming unnecessary? Vandally, that's the electricity of the horns shocked me more than I expected, so I couldn't help it. Saria, Nay-san, you're weak to electric shocks, aren't you? Rita, I believe I heard you screaming as well. Zadyrus, I was just feeling a little playful. Rita, that kind of playfulness is unnecessary. And more importantly, tighten your spirit form. You look like a log. Zadyrus, you're mistaken. This isn't because I had a child's body or that I had excess flesh when I was still alive, but because I'm still experienced. Rita, don't play around in battle when you're still inexperienced. You scared the hell out of me. Vigoro, yeah, you've got some bad hobbies, Ju-chan. Porcus, Vandally was watching Rita being scolded by the senior members. It seemed that he had decided not to say anything to her himself. But Saria, you should be careful as well, okay? Even if you're going to do something like that, do it better next time. If you don't, I'll let my enemies cut my flesh and organs in battle again. Vandally, it's unfair that I get scolded for being reckless while others can get away with it. It should be fine to say at least this much. Please don't. Really, please don't. I'll think of a better way to do it. Saria, with her face turning pale or not, Saria hastily made this promise. Things would probably be fine from now on. Though this is another topic. How did you do that thing where you separated into pieces while attacking? How did you do that thing where you separated into pieces while attacking? Vandally, though Saria and Rita's pieces of armor were separate at first glance, they had generally moved together as if worn by an invisible person up until now. However, they had acquired the spirit form skill, though it was still level 1, which had granted them misty bodies. Yet they had separated the pieces of their armor in battle. Shouldn't it have been the other way around? That's because we have acquired the long-distance control skill. Saria, long-distance control? Vandally, yes. It is a skill that lets us move parts of our bodies such as our gauntlets and boots separately from our main bodies. Saria, apparently, Saria and Rita had wondered whether something like that would be possible and acquired the skill by practicing together. That seems like quite a useful skill. I would certainly like to acquire this skill myself. Jiu. Bone Man, G.E. Bone Bird, Bone Man and Bone Bird spoke up after hearing this story. Since Bone Man had flesh and cartilage made of spirit form and Bone Bird was made entirely of bones other than its wings, it was likely possible for them to acquire the long-range control skill with practice. If they controlled their spirit form, they would simply be separating their bones without any risk. It was likely that the long-range control skill was a special skill possessed by undead such as living armors, skeletons and zombies to begin with. Vandally hadn't seen it in this world yet, but scenes where a zombie or skeleton's severed limbs would move and attack on their own had been almost obligatory to include in horror works on Earth. There were things like severed lizard tails that regrow, but they didn't move on their own, so that was probably different. I'd like to acquire that skill, too. Vandally, eh? Though the skill was a specialized skill for undead, Vandally didn't see this as a reason that he couldn't acquire it himself. But as he said this, the atmosphere around everyone froze. I don't know about Botchin separating himself into pieces. Saria, if you do not put yourself back together afterwards, would you not be forced to become an undead yourself, my lord? Bone Man, no, I'm not planning to cut my own arms and legs off to practice. Vandally, it would indeed be problematic if he didn't put himself back together afterwards. He thought that it might be possible if he used spirit form transformation beforehand, but if not, he might cause irreversible damage to himself. He had put himself back together after allowing Bgogan to cut his torso, but that was because he had repaired the damage immediately after being cut. There was no telling what could happen if he delayed the repairing process to practice for acquiring the skill. For now, let's try doing it with my hair. Vandally, Zadiris and Bazdia had called Vandaly's long hair truly manly hair. It seemed that he had wanted it to be like the lion's manes of the ghoul men. Darsa had thought of it as being cute, so Vandally was growing it out, thinking that it was fine as it was. It would likely reach waist length soon. He did plan to cut it before it reached his ankles, however. Well, if it's your hair, then Saria, my lord, if it does not work well with your hair, please do not attempt to make changes to your fingers or anything of the sort. Bone Man, it seemed that Vandally had made them worry, but he had no intentions of giving up on the acquisition of the long-range control skill that seemed as if it would have a variety of applications. Even if he did acquire it, he had no plans to cut off his arms and send them flying to perform rocket punches or anything like that. However, things got even harsher from the 11th floor onwards. The monsters appearing were all rank 5, and from time to time a rank 6 monster would appear on its own. But it's from the 11th floor onwards that this dungeon becomes a good hunting ground. There are a lot of usable materials other than those that come from monsters. Porcus, the fresh leaves of an enormous fern the size or a large tree could be crushed to make medicine, and if dried and boiled, they made a bitter but healthy tea. Apparently, adventurers in the past had ventured into this dungeon with the aim of reaching the floors containing plateaus in which amber could be found, and cliffs whose rocks would produce whetstones that made it more difficult for weapons to rust. And there were many experience points to be gained here. The dinosaurs here are on the verge of death, so please finish them off. Vandally, as you will. Bone Man, Nasan, an octopus-like one went that way. Rita, Botchin. What is this flying monster that seems to be related to snails and octopuses? Saria, I think it's an ammonite, though the ones I know didn't fly in the air. Vandally, a knight of the ammo race. In that case, I shall be its opponent. Bone Man, no, it's not really a knight. Vandally. Bone Man stepped forward to challenge the flying ammonite with a shell as large as a bear to an honorable one-on-one duel. Including this ammonite, all of the monsters appearing here were individually of the same or higher rank as Bone Man. Of course, by defeating them, he could gain large amounts of experience points. Exclamation mark iron slash. Vigoro, facing a hard-headed herbivorous dinosaur's headbutt attack, Vigoro used his newly learned axe technique martial skill. With a loud smashing sound, it split the dinosaur's oval-shaped, bony head in two, continuing down to its chest. Now that Vigoro had become a ghoul berserker in the battle in the Devil's Nest Forest and acquired a job in Taylorsheim, his strength was equivalent to that of a B-class adventurer. As he had acquired Theaksman job that provided bonuses to Theak's technique and forestation skills, he would likely continue to grow even stronger. I've even split the magic stone in half. Vigoro. What are you doing? Zadyrus. Vigoro felt the sensation of cutting through the magic stone among the flesh and blood and raised his voice. Zadyrus sighed as she fired a spell at another dinosaur. Zadyrus had reached level 100 long ago but had lacked the skills to increase her rank. Due to the training that she had done after coming to Taylorsheim, she was now a rank 6 school high mage. Her appearance hadn't changed significantly, but a red jewel had appeared on her forehead like a third eye. It was apparently some kind of organ that assisted her in the use of magic. Zadyrus's light attribute attack spells were fearsome, cutting the ankylosaur like dinosaurs like hot knives through butter. Thegent revocation skill is working well, boy. Can you give me a little of your mana? Zadyrus. Yes. Vandally. Her mana pool had increased as well, but it was certainly still nowhere near Vandali's. It was only natural for her to run out of mana if she used it carelessly. The most valuable materials that could be harvested in Borkus's sub-dragon savannah, other than the materials obtained from the dungeon's boss, were the honey and beeswax of the cemetery bees. They were rank 5 bee-shaped monsters, around 30 centimeters in length. Each of them weren't individually threatening, but they were fearsome in that the whole swarm attacked together like a single unit. Their large jaws were capable of shredding plate armor like paper, and their sharp stingers couldn't be blocked by the average shield bearer. And the most vicious weapon they had was their deadly venom. The potent neurotoxin couldn't be resisted by average resistance skills and was capable of causing death by shock in minutes. It was said that countless corpses of adventurers desiring the exquisite honey and the beeswax that could be turned into the most extravagant candles and soap could be seen surrounding the nests of these monsters. So their nests were just like cemeteries. That's what I heard, but could it be that they're surprisingly friendly to people? Vandally. There's no way, kid. Could it be that those bees are undead? Borkus. I think they're healthy and very much alive. Vandally. Borkus was astonished by the sight of Vandally being swarmed by so many bees that he appeared to be made of them. You wanted sweet things, so when you asked me to find some for you, this is what I thought of. The cemetery bees are the rarest monsters in this dungeon. Borkus. Considering that, there are a lot of them, aren't there? Vandally. The cemetery bees buzzed around Vandally, licking him with their tongues rather than biting him with their jaws or stabbing him with their stingers. Vandally didn't get the sense that they were surrounding him to increase his body temperature and overheat him to death, so it seemed that they were simply attached to him. Amazing. Botchan, even the bees are madly in love with you. Saria. Jayu, is this really alright, my lord? Bone Man, probably. Vandally. If Vandally had been someone who hated insects, he would probably have fainted, but he didn't dislike them that much. As a child, he had admired rhinoceros beetles and stag beetles. As he reminisced about this, a conspicuously large cemetery bee, leading countless other bees, flew towards him. It made a creaking sound with its jaws as it landed on Vandaly's head. Boy, is that not what is known as a queen bee? Zadyrus. It looks like it. Vandally. And what is it doing? Zadyrus. Probably being tamed. Vandally. Boy, is it possible that you can charm not only undead, but monsters with things like death and cemetery in their names? Zadyrus. That's pretty amazing. I've heard that insectoid monsters have powerful instincts that makes it impossible for anyone to tame them. Borkus. Yeah, that's amazing. Vandally. This could be the first time anyone in the world has done this. Vigoro. I'm guessing you're praising me, but I can't hear you over the sound of their wings. Vandally. It seemed that the Earth attribute charm also worked on a certain kind of insects. Or perhaps he had used undead insects so much that even living insects had started to become attached to him? Chapter 49. The victory against the mid-boss was unfulfilling, but the dragon golem is next. Insectoid monster.
Alright guys, so right now my file is loading. Finally done. Thank goodness. Sorry about that. The file is getting heavier due to the recording that I'm doing right now. It's not because my computer is really low spec. It's really high. I would like to show it to you, but I'm going to restrain myself from doing that because yeah, just want to make it a bit private. But yeah, it's not because it's a low spec computer. It's because of the file is getting really heavy due to the recording, due to my time lapse record over here. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, yeah, it's a recording right now. So I think it's from since from my starting coloring it up to now I started recording, and pretty much I might say, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is done. Mm, let me just do something about this tent a bit, and this uh, treasure chest with a very weird coloration. Mm, yeah, that's pretty nice. Oh, seen this mistake over here. Let's just clean that up. You don't want to see that when I recheck this thing. I might just yeah, this thing is pretty much done. I'll just probably check this tomorrow. If I see a few more errors, I will definitely fix it up. And but yeah, overall this thing is in the bag. And right now I'm just gonna clean some stuff that I missed. And mm, I would talk about my plans for this is to uh, upload the finished product to my social media, Twitter and Facebook. I have my own Facebook page, the ProDigal Shrimp. You can check it out if you want to. And also, I'll try to post it also at Pixiv afterwards. Yeah, I have a Pixiv account, and I've uploaded a lot of most of my stuff also there. But it's not as yeah, it's not as detailed compared to what I did for my Twitter and Facebook. But the problem about Twitter, it's kind of hard to go and find it. Go through my profile and find the stuff that I uploaded. I might re-upload some of my stuff that I did before or this if I feel like it. But yeah, the best place you might actually see most of my stuff and won't have any problem finding all of the things that I did will be Twitter or Facebook. Oh, wrong. Pixiv or Facebook. There we go. So yeah, just check me out there. It will still have my name, Portugal Shrimp, and will be you will see some of the products, the actual pictures there. Have you seen some of my videos and that I work out? It's pretty nice, and you can give me some tips or comments of what you think about it. Especially for those who are professionals, really want to know more about where I could improve. Like I've always said, I'm not really a pro. I'm just learning for because I want to expand my my tool skills. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. But of course, uh, yeah, I'll definitely find ways to mm, improve more some of the stuff that I've been missing over here. Uh, Especially the background that has a bit of a mess, and the coloring. I already purchased the program. Oh no, the tutorials that I've found in Facebook. Um, I buy let me check the name of the guy again. I purchased his stuff, the tutorial stuff that he had made. If you're familiar with the guy, where's my downloads again? Over here. Okay. Uh, yeah. Uh, yeah. So his name is Hyuk Lee, a Korean. He did some comic stuff that are made for covers and stuff for DC and Marvel comics. It's really interesting that he could, as a foreigner who managed to do this wonderful art, was actually hired by Marvel and DC Comics to make cover books for their comics. Uh, I really want to at least achieve that same kind of a level of designing and be able to uh, earn some money from that also. Because some that's one part of my goals in life is to reach that level at least. And one other thing is to that yeah, create my own comics one day. So I didn't hesitate to purchase his stuff because his stuff is really nice, and I want to learn from a professional so I can apply it to my plethora of tools also, skill tools, I might say. hmm And of course, what you see now is just the beginning of my skills improving. If I might say, oh yeah, definitely say that this is an improvement compared to the very first one that I made for a concept art. Yeah. Anyways, guys, so far, did you enjoy the story from the Death Mage Who Doesn't Want a Fourth Time? That the story is we've reached to the point where I actually predicted. I didn't really predict that because I already know. Uh, we reached to the point where what's her name again? I keep forgetting her name. Uh, the vampire girl. Not a girl or a woman, maybe. Yeah, yeah. So the vampire who attacked randomly actually decided to become his subordinate, and it's really interesting that she immediately rat out her previous owner or previous master, and now she's serving under Vandalay just because due to the power that Vandalay possess, and that also the threat that he has the ability to destroy souls, so that would cut you from being reincarnated if you got killed by him. So it is a very terrifying ability, if I may say, destroying souls. And for a child who is just around 3 to 4 years old, actually, is he 5 right now? I'm not very sure. Uh, but as a young boy, he's still technically very young. He has already this kind of ability. So let's just think about that. If he reaches adulthood or even in teenage, what can his abilities reach? And what can he do against the head vampires that are trying to catch him? Even the god who is technically the guy who's the god for joy and life, was he? Yeah, yeah, the evil god that is targeting him. What is Vanally capable of to defeat these guys that are targeting him? Because of course he's the main character. He will definitely fight against these enemies that are technically targeting him. If they could only learn that if they won't just target the boy, the main character, they won't probably get wrecked or experience this kind of trashing that will be probably definitely will happen against them. So yeah, let's look forward to that. What will happen in the future? But uh, and also, oh yeah, let's talk about the the bikini armors, the sisters. My goodness, the first time I've read about them, it's like, wow, the R13 or R15 level of of restriction on this light novel is kind of kind of spicy, I might say already. Although there's not a lot of sex, I might really R18 stuff that might happen. We're still in the level that teenagers would read this without getting in trouble. But of course, yeah, them as being naked bikini, not naked bikini armors who are fighting against these monsters. Uh, it's just so bizarre thinking about it, and it's like, uh, how am I saying this? Oh my goodness! In the near future, definitely what will happen to those two. What Vanderly predicted. I don't know if I should share this because it's a bit spoiling. But yeah, technically there will be some stuff will happen in their future that will improve their conditions as being uh, spirit armors. But it will be there's also some uh, some stuff that will happen. Also consequences in getting that ability. But yeah, I won't say say more stuff that might spoil a lot of people. I'm sorry. Okay. And also, if you are interested of some of the, let's see if I can show it to you guys. Where's that? Oh, here we are. So, uh, there are some illustrations for the manga, the light novel. I mean, uh, so yeah. So these are there's some there's a website where all the illustrations for the light novel are been drawn over, and it's really nice. I really like the art style. Artist is a very popular artist, and he worked really well at this illustrations that he made from the story. So yeah, so this was these are pictures from the volume one. So Vandalay and his mother. And yeah, speaking of the bikini armors, here are they. It's so weird. uh, my goodness. So yeah, in the near future, there's some application that will happen that yeah. Anyways, so this is Bastia. Bastia or Zader is not Bastia. So yeah, this is our the volume one pictures. Forgot. This is Bastia. Zader's mother. Zader's daughter. Yeah, so she's the mother, and this one is her daughter. So she's younger compared to her to her daughter. So it's kind of weird, also. And this is Vigoro, the champ, the lion head guy. And oh no, let's not show that to you guys. So this is and remember her name. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at remembering names. Can I make this expand or something? Uh, let's see. If I can just. I don't think so. I can't. There's no names coming out from this. What's her name again? Oh yeah. So her name is Tara. This is actually volume two. Yeah, volume two chapters. So yeah, Basia and her are having some arguments at this point, and Figaro here being a champ, and Vandalay when he got hurt. against the Orc King or Orc Lord, and yeah, this is so nice. This art style, man. This subtle background on the at his side, like there's mountains, but he doesn't need to be very detailed, but it still works. Still works. I still need to be more simplistic to my designs because just this is enough to create a wonderful design, and that's one of the things that I would like to achieve in near future. Also, the black and white of this, the gradient. Oh my goodness, he's good. The art is really good. And we got Vigoro. No, what's his name again? Uh, ah, Barkus. Barkus. Yeah, he's a Titan. His face half skeleton, and he managed to, yeah, eventually managed to repair his body. Pretty much his hand was brought back, so he has two hands again. And the birthday party, I think, yeah, this was the birthday party when they gave him the skull, and this is our mother petting him. The dinosaur stuff. He made them in zombies. And so here's the vampire. hmm Leonora and uh, Berkheim. Yeah, I think it's Berkheim. Yeah. Oh, let's not see. What? Look at that. Oh yeah. So I think that's pretty much where it is. I think what part is this when he broke the ice? Yeah, I think he was trying to break the ice. And this was that vampire that he destroyed. He destroyed his soul, shattered. It's pretty epic, man. And earlier, when we actually read this chapter today, when Polvina, the female orc, uh, I, I don't think she was actually uh, described as an orc, but she still has some orc features in her body, and she's like throwing Vandally right now. It's a really cute picture. And Basha being really sexy pregnant over there. hmm Oh yeah, that's kind of a bit of a spoiler, so let's not see that. So yeah, if you want to see the wonderful uh, concept arts, no, that's actually concept arts. It's visual novels. Yeah, the visual novels that was created. It's really good. You can go look for it in the internet or here in the deadmagefandom.com. So it's their wiki. Go ahead and see it if you were interested, because these things are really awesome. Actually, there's more than 7 volumes, supposedly. They only have 7 volumes over here. But I could say that this art is pretty amazing. I could be saying it because it is. There's also some few artists that I've been following that are really good. But this guy takes the cake also for me for as the black and white design. The gradients pretty solid, and I'm trying to at least achieve this kind of black and white one day. But as you saw my skills, it's kind of all over the place, and also mm, a bit of too detailed, I might say. So I may need to set back a bit and adjust my art style more, because I'm really used to putting a lot of details on designs. Yeah. So yeah, pretty much this thing is pretty much done. I'll just check it out tomorrow or next day, depends, just to see if there's stuff that I miss. But I will definitely leave my signature on this and post it on my social media afterwards. Okay, once again, guys, thank you very, very much for watching this, and feel free to leave a like and subscribe on my channel if you enjoyed one of some this journey of me creating art while you listen to a story, and also uh, in the near future. I will probably still stream. Yeah, definitely I will still stream, but probably not doing some concept art first because I want to apply the things I'm learning from the videos that I'm watching right now from the tutorials. I'll still stream my training. You may say my official training arc is starting beginning. It's actually beginning now, and I'll definitely apply it and show it to you guys as I stream it. hmm So yeah, look forward to me sketching and practicing anatomy, then practicing his style of coloring. Because that's on one thing I'm also like looking forward to is to be more persistent. Is that the right word? Proficient. There we go. The proficient way of coloring because I learned a lot of ways of coloring like gradient to color, and then there's also like straight up coloring, adjusting the lighting. I'm actually really confused. What should I do? What should I follow? Or is it okay to like mix them together or something? Yeah, so that's something I'm really excited to learn because I want to find that right procedure that I want to apply for my designs. But okay, this video is really long already, so I won't talk anymore. I'll end it here. Thank you very much once again for coming here and watching. Okay, so this is your boy Shrimp. Once again, thank you and goodbye. I'll look forward for this post in my social media. Adios.